Good evening. So it's been a while since I've done one of these distance things, and I'm not so sure I have all my audio equipment up, but I'm sure the chat will tell me if something has gone wrong. There'll be the typical boomer jokes in about 5 seconds. At any rate, I wanted to do a distance stream, not really because I had anything directly to talk about, but more or less because I wanted to keep up with my channel. As people who follow me on social media know, I've been undergoing a move and some major life changes, and I wanted to just ruminate a little bit tonight. We're in the middle of spring 2019. I think we're undergoing a lot of changes in our society, and it just seemed like there was a lot to talk about. I've been able to release one video since the move, but that's largely because I recorded ahead of time, and I'm just trying to get everything set up so that I can be comfortable with making content again. Well, I see the boomer tech problem crowd is here, but I don't see any complaints, so I guess people are hearing me. But, so yeah, I guess I wanted to just talk about the dynamics of the culture war, because I think that we've kind of come to a stable point in the dynamics between the left and the right. I think the left has found a dynamic that they are very comfortable with, and the dynamic that they're very comfortable with are saying basically to everyone that the right is dangerous, we need to deplatform them. And they have enough institutional power to essentially make this happen, and the right doesn't really know how to deal with this. We can't take the left on in any meaningful way, because there simply is no ground upon which to have a battle. I know that the mainstream conservatives like Ben Shapiro are having sort of battles with the left, but they don't ever seem to get past the points that you usually have discussed since the 1990s. I checked in on the Federalist just today. It's a magazine I used to read. And, this is the classic National Review conservative. Everyone graduated from Yale and Harvard, and they circulate a bunch of mainstream right-wing opinions. And they're still talking about how the left is politically correct and intolerant. It's getting to the point where the left is making fun of the futility of this complaint from the right. And the right doesn't really have any way to answer this. And I think that this is a new dynamic. It's one that's making the left very comfortable. As you can see, I think, prominently online, I think you see a reemergence of the leftist YouTuber. I've noticed this archetype. I wanted to do a video on the leftist YouTuber, the formula that makes the leftist YouTuber work. I think ContraPoints was sort of the prototype for this model. And I think that in the wake of ContraPoints and their incredible reception, both in mainstream and radical sides of the left, I think a lot of other leftists are following their lead. And of course, one of the formulas for that is to never platform the right, or never really address them directly. Oh yeah, so guys, by the way, this chat is to answer your questions, but if you want me to answer a question, you have to at least distribute this to me. Otherwise, I'm not going to see it. That's the bare minimum. Of course, if you super chat, I will definitely read out your question, and we'll go from there. I have been trying to keep up with what's going on, and of course, I've been in the middle of a lot of major life changes. Right now, I'm exhausted. I just got back from a late night working, and I'm trying. It's hard because you're reasonably aware of what's going on, and you don't really know what to make. And I've said this many times before on the channel. You don't know what to really talk about as a right winger anymore, because the right wing has sort of been successfully ghettoized, and so you can talk about stuff that we talk about in our little right wing ghetto here, or you can talk about what the left is doing, but they both seem really disconnected. And I think this is oftentimes, I've talked about people like, the people who were formerly known as the alt-right, and that encompasses an enormous number of people. But one YouTuber, Millennial Woes, had said something along these lines. It's the right, having the left sort of isolate you into a ghetto forces the right to come to terms with the fact that it doesn't indeed have a community to belong to. It is not has not built any of the institutional supports necessary to create those communities. Okay, well, finally we're getting some questions here, but I'll complete that thought. So, in isolation, what it is the right's kind of locked into a ghetto, and the ghetto has a demand to feel like it's winning, but the problem is it's not. So a content creator is more or less torn between talking about truthful statements, a truthful assessment of reality, doing what's necessary, which oftentimes is really boring and, quite frankly, thankless work, and then, well, basically placating fans who want to see kind of a cathartic showdown with the left, which, quite frankly, the left won't respond to anything that I or anyone else in my position will say. So with that, I see the first super chat from Louisville fan 1215 for $5. Thank you for your contribution. Don't you think you're a little harsh on the National Review set, as they've been trying to build a coalition that can actually win an election? I don't think they have a coalition that can win an election. I think that they demonstrated that they did not have a coalition that could win an election in 2012. And if you're telling me that the National Review crowd won an election in 2016, then I just think that's, I quite frankly don't think that's accurate. I think that anti-progressivism won 2016, but it wasn't Jonah Goldberg. It wasn't any of the National Review set. And now, I don't mean to say that National Review conservatism needs to be shunned. I absolutely want to work with them, but I remember when I was starting up Via Obscura, and for people who follow me again on social media, on Discord, they know that I've lost the name Via Obscura, and so we're working on changing the website and the format to something that is not already patented. But I was looking for people to interview, and I contacted a number of the Federalist people. And this is when I was still very much receptive to National Review and mainstream conservatives at this point. People who've been following me since 2016, when I started this channel, know that really when I started this channel in the March of 2016, I was much more in the mode of a Ben Shapiro. I wasn't I wasn't a libertarian. I understood sort of the C.S. Lewis Christian critique of modern concepts of morality independent from the divine and the supernatural. I understood all that. But I thought that there was some sort of winning formula within the Buckley vision, where we're going to preserve X, Y, and Z, and then hold the line on religious liberty, and then the demographics will stabilize, and there'll be new coalitions coming on to essentially hold the line against further progressive intrusions, and so on and so forth. But slowly I became disillusioned with this idea, and one of the turning points was really as late as late as last year at this time. And I was trying to get people to interview for the Via Obscura project, and I reached out to a number of people from the Federalist, and I said, I'm a conservative. I want to do an interview with you guys, and they initially said yes. And I'm like, okay, cool. I set aside time. I made time in my. I have a pretty busy schedule. I'm not gonna lie. I made time in my. I mean, I don't do this for a job, right? I have other things to do, and I made time on my busy schedule to take this person's interview. And then 3 hours before the interview, and I've taken time off from work and all this stuff, the guy DMs me on Twitter and says, I'm not going to tell you who this Federalist writer is because it'll cause drama and I don't want to stir it up. And he says, oh, I just saw that you were on the Worski channel for a debate. And I'm like, yeah, I debated them. And I said, it was I debated, and strangely enough, it wasn't on anything that was scary. I didn't go on the Worski channel to discuss race realism or any of the other things that will get you banned from the mainstream. I went on the Worski stream to debate the existence of God and religion. And supposedly the existence of God and the usefulness of religion is something that is a cornerstone of conservative philosophy. And the Federalist writer said, well, we can't do the interview because I have a rule of thumb. I don't talk to anyone who's talked to someone on the alt right. I'm just like, wait a minute. So this is like a cooties effect. At that point, and you know, the other person I contacted from the Federalist, right around the time that this happened, they also gave me the cold shoulder. And I remember thinking, like, okay, so obviously there's an institutional decision that they're not going to talk to people like me. And I'm not all right. I don't talk about explicitly scary stuff on this YouTube channel. I talk about pretty run of the mill things, and most of the radical positions I have are fairly intellectual. But I talk to the bad people, so now my reputation is indelibly smeared with them. I've contracted cooties from these people, and at this point, this was just before the Sarah Jiang thing, right? And the same people who were willing to cut me off for talking to the bad people, more or less, I had to watch those very people write I'm shocked to see that the New York Times is hiring racists, even though, of course, the New York Times, not the Federalist, decides who are called racists and who are not. And Sarah Zhang, or it's Zhang, right? She said horrible things, and I just realized, like, how are you surprised if you're willing to take your enemies and they're essentially deciding who you're going to platform or who you're not? What hope is there for the modern conservative movement? And I just, at that point, that really killed all interest I had. You know, it killed all interests I had with dealing with these people. I don't think they actually want to win. Even I think they want to maintain their position as the rightmost acceptable opinion in the media. And I guess I'm just uninterested in that. There's no way the Federalist or the National Review's opinions are going to be electable in 10 years. Demographically, that's impossible. Now, the question is, do they have the imagination to talk about a new political coalition where people like myself, who are traditionalists and religious and come from a Christian worldview, where we can have our values met and then being brought into another power-sharing coalition? I don't think they do, because their mind is still completely in the 1980s. And all they have to do is, all they're doing is hand-wringing. That's all they ever do. They hand-wring about Jesse Smollett. They hand-wring about Brent Kavanaugh. They hand-wring. Oh my God, can you believe it? These progressives, they're so... And it's predictable. They act shocked every time. There's a breathless article in the Federalist right now describing how free speech is being curtailed by gender and cultural studies. I mean, what is this, the 1990s? I mean, this has been going on for 30 years now. And this is you could basically auto-generate these articles at this stage. There's no discussion about adapting to living in this environment. And that's just, I don't know how to deal with that. Someone's asking, how did I lose Via Obscura? The band who owned the name threatened me with legal action. It's basically that simple. And I don't want to contend for it. I've got enough stuff on my plate. Mac Daradensky for $2. Thoughts on Sargon Nick versus Destiny Hassan debate? Okay, I mean, it was bizarre. Sargon and Nick probably could have had a more productive debate amongst themselves. I don't consider Destiny to be an honest actor. I'll debate him, but he's not. No one who watches this channel should be under an illusion that Destiny, Omni-Destiny, whoever the professional StarCraft player is who vlogs under Destiny, they should have no illusion that this guy believes anything. Uh, he's he's the classic millennial thinker. He's never gotten over the fascination with skepticism. He's never gotten over the understanding that negative arguments have a natural ability to win debates. And I don't think he's ever really serious. I don't think he's ever really seriously thought about what he believes, not just how he can sound more intelligent than someone in a debate. And of course, you can always sound more intelligent in a debate by taking the negative side of an argument. That's just how things work. And so he'll say ridiculous things like he had a, I always remember this because his favorite thing to argue for is personal choice. He's sort of like a left liberalist almost. He argues personal choice, everything's fine as long as it's personal choice. And then he has Christy Winters on for a stream, and he says the biggest mistake anyone can make is to think that human freedom and free will and choice is a real thing. Which is fine. If you want to be skeptical of free choice, that's your prerogative. And of course, it's very hard to prove that because the concept of free choice in a universe that has a deterministic model is something that's highly questionable. But Destiny, you can't go on then and then do muff freedom after you say that humans have no free will. Again, and Hassan Piker, I watched the guy and I felt sorry for him. He came off to me, and this is going to be horrible because he might watch this, but it came off to me like he was not a very intelligent person. It sounds really bad to say that, but sometimes you see how people talk inside a professional environment and you wonder about that. And I don't think that I'm some kind of brilliant person. I'm an amateur YouTuber. But maybe I shouldn't say not intelligent. I thought that Hassan he seemed incredibly intellectually underprepared relative to Sargon and Destiny. And Nick. And then Nick, I mean, probably if you wrote our ideas on paper, Nick and I don't have that much we disagree on in some sense, but this is what's so funny about Nick Fuentes is I talk to his fans and I'm like, I don't know. I tell them I don't have a problem with what he says, but the way he holds himself, the way he smirks with the squinty eyes and doesn't make eye contact when he's smiling, and the way he uses the folksy language, I associate that. And I am a blue stater, so maybe this is a blue state thing, but I associate this with dishonesty. And it's a used Carmen kind of vibe. And it really, really, really off-puts me. And it seems to broadcast every word he says. I'm BSing you. And the fact that he does this irony bros stuff, and the fact that he always seems to be, his edginess seems to be calculated, as if he started doing this to see how edgy he could be without ever seeming vulnerable. That seems to be Nick Fuentes' thing. And I'm a radical myself, so I can't fault anyone for being radical. But at the same time, I mean, it does not seem genuine. It doesn't seem sincere. And I bring this up to the sort of insincerity issue and it's mostly boomers and zoomers. It's mostly, I think the Nick Fuentes fascination has skipped my generation of millennials, the sort of older, early mid 30s or late 20s millennial set. I think it's the appeal of this figure has skipped our generation. But I bring it to them and go, this guy, I feel he doesn't have any sincerity. And they're like, oh, well, yeah. Nick, Nick, he's just a grifter. And I'm like, well, if he's a grifter, if you think he's BSing you, then why Why do I have to hear his opinion on news items? I don't know. I'll go on. I think I've said too much about that. Maybe it'll come up. Who knows? Louisville fan 1215 for $2. Ben Dominish interviewed Faith Goldie on his podcast. Oh, really? Okay. Well, hey, and there's another one. Faith Goldie is really good friends with Nick Fuentes. Ironically enough, I actually was. This is a strange thing. Me and my wife were in. We were in the Czech Republic when Faith Goldie's wedding was happening. We didn't have an invitation, but I was always like, I saw the announcements on social media. I'm like, are we gonna be the right wing wedding crashers? Wouldn't that be fun? I can bust in and accidentally spill my champagne on Nick Fuentes. That would be entertaining. That would, I feel like that's almost like a Farley Brothers skit or something. Okay. Oh, sorry, but to answer your, I guess I have to give credit where credit is due. If Ben Dominish is interviewing Faith Goldie, but I don't know, man. What does it mean? What does it mean? I almost feel like Faith Goldie is a little bit of a slam dunk. I feel I'd rather see Ben Dominish interview Lauren Southern. I feel that she's a harder person to dismiss. Actually, let's do one better. Interview Brittany Pettibone, right? Interview her concerning her recent fiance's ignominious termination. The ignominious termination of her fiance's ESTA visa. I mean, that's atrocious. That's an abuse of power. And she's a very sympathetic person. I feel Faith Goldie, again, I don't want to dress her down, but Faith Goldie isn't going to strike any heart. She's not going to pull the heartstrings of any in the coastal set. Something about her just does not click with the coastal set. Radio Plastic for $10 says, here is for a mole bug intro on the problem with nerd culture. Your videos have been invaluable to me. I hope to hear much more from you. You and Jay Peterson have helped me reconnect with my Christian family. Why, thank you, Radio Plastic. Well, I hope I can continue to make content that helps you in whatever way I can. I do have a lot of ideas coming down the line. Really, it's just about priority. You know, the thing is, I know I need to make a distributism video because I said I would. I'll have to make a series of distributism videos, but the difficulty is that requires research. And that requires time, and it's always easy to just make the next video that's on your mind. And there's so many videos that I can just make, and I can actually get them done. So putting something off into the future just seems... I don't know, it seems like it's not a very good use of time. I guess if I were to just... I mean, maybe the chat can fill me in on what they would like to see. I don't feel like I have to make the distributist video, or the distributism video in some kind of time frame. I don't feel like I've promised it in so many words that if it doesn't come out in 2 months, people will be disappointed with the channel. I've been putting off making a video on distributism for my entire career as the distributist on YouTube. I'm pretty sure 6 more months isn't going to kill anybody, or maybe even a year. But if it were my preference, the one that immediately suggests itself to my mind is to continue with the Trad Codex series. And the next one will be on Alice in Wonderland and Bioshock Infinite, if my list is correct. And I'd like to do... what I've learned works really well for the Trad Codex series. Initially, I was going to have a video on an old piece of culture, a video on a new piece of culture. But now what I've been doing is I've been taking new pieces of culture, making the video subject on that, and then going back and looking at older pieces of culture that influenced my understanding. So when I did Lovecraft, I also did Hieronymus Bosch. I pronounced his name correctly this time, didn't I? Okay. I'm terrible with name pronunciations. When I did Bioshock, I also did Ayn Rand. Although Ayn Rand, I don't just classify as classic culture, perhaps not. But I find that pairing works way better than if I were to do a book on Plato's Republic. It is very hard, or a video on Plato's Republic. It is very hard to do an original video on Plato's Republic. That work has been analyzed for 2,000 years. The possibility that you get new analysis on it is going to be very difficult. But I always love hearing what people want to see more of. One thing I intend to do, and this month, actually maybe even tonight, is I intend to hire a transcription service and get essays for my top videos. And I haven't really decided whether I'm going to post them for the general public in transcript form or just for the people who support me on Subscribestar. What I'll likely do is post the one on Mencius Molebug for the general public, and then post the rest of them as for people who support me on Subscribestar. But at any rate, since I have a higher paying job and subsequently less time, I just think that's a good use of resources. It's not intelligent to pay to spend time doing these things that you can pay people to do. I know that's a globalist principle, and we're all supposed to be localists, but excuse me, I have to kill that. Excuse me. I know we're all supposed to be localists, and we're all supposed to do things from scratch, but it's just not. It's just gonna result in me making less videos so I can get a transcript out. And I don't think that's not a good use of resources. Okay. I apologize for the phone, but that's just... So I am setting up a new apartment, and there's a lot of life changes, so things are going to be a little bit rough on this channel for the foreseeable future until things... I actually am considering doing these distance things with my actual face. I think that would be better. I don't have my camera set up, but I wouldn't mind doing that. I promise not... I mean, last time I did a video with my face, I was rushed... I was, it was a busy Wednesday. It was Ash Wednesday. You're fasting, you're tired... You miss one service, you have to go to the late service, you realize the video is going to be late, you grab your video, and before you start streaming, you don't realize that your video is shooting up from below, so it looks like you've got 5 chins. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I have probably put on some weight this year since I haven't had an exercise routine, but at the same time, I think I can make a little more of a flattering video angle than the one that was on that last video that had my face on it. Blah 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 blah. I actually want to perhaps go through a video today. I want to see if we can't do that guy from Innuendo Studios. For some reason, I am fascinated with the Innuendo Studios guy, and I forget what his name is, but I have the videos saved. So But thank you, Radio Plastic. I really appreciate that super chat. I hope I can continue to make videos that are valuable for you. Nusantara Rising for $10 Australian. Shia Islam emphasizes Hussein's martyrdom. Has quietists who believe imperfect humans can't enforce Sharia. Alawites drink, follow Christ. Should they be adopted as the right answer to Sarsour's... I think he means Linda Sarsour's Sunnism. Well, I don't know. To be quite honest, I don't know if the right can somehow incorporate Persian Shias into its political coalition. Then by all means do that. I definitely think Shia Islam is closer to Christianity than Sunni orthodoxies. For what it's worth, there's been a lot less conflict between Shia Islam and Christianity politically. I think that we're in a position right now where the right has to be open to getting allies because the right is so far behind the 8 ball. Maybe in Hungary or Poland, or if you live in Brazil, maybe the right has some kind of cultural edge there. But in the main countries that produce media, in Germany, in Britain, in America, and by America I mean Canada and the United States, not both South and North America. In those areas, culturally speaking, the right is completely on the back foot because the left has convinced everyone in the media that the right has no long-term political coalition that can wield power. And in the absence of that, they will have no power. Whatever power they have is just something that they can operate within 10 years. If the Republican Party promises something, there's every possibility in the world that they'll never be able to keep that promise because they don't have a demographic coalition that will be able to win presidential elections in 15 years. Democratic promises are forever, which is why their promises to do slavery reparations may cost white Democrats a lot more than they initially think it will. I say truly, there is no. The only group of people that I've ever really wanted to politically destroy in totality has been the white progressive. I harbor actually a very deep understanding for all minority groups and all. Do I want to use the people of color term? All non-European groups and European groups that are in this country, all diaspora groups, I have a very deep sympathy for. But the white progressive, that archetype needs to die, and I think it will die in the hill of reparations. I think that when you look at Chapo Trap House, when you look at Innuendo Studios, when you look at Peter Coffin and all of these people, I think you're literally seeing the Nietzschean Last Man. And I do not think that Nietzschean Last Man is some kind of prelude to Superman. It's a prelude to the death of the white progressive. Sorry for the phone again. At any rate, we'll have to answer this question. I apologize for the pauses. I'm continuously getting texted. Kevkowski for $5 says, "Can conservatives gain influence within unionized labor? Aren't unions based on guilds with protected interests of the local population?" Yeah, I think a guild system or something that can sustain more skilled labor is eventually will be needed, and it's a great idea. The problem is that this is the question. Like, do Republicans? I mean, Republicans should try to get power inside unions. It's a good idea, but it's not like a winning idea. It doesn't change the tone for them. The unions just become another situation in which Republicans are getting, wait for it, that great formula for failure: an increasing share of a declining market, like in other people's money. That's how you go broke. Down the tubes. Unions have less power, so getting an increasing share of a declining prospect, it's a stopgap. It gives you power in the next 10 years, but it's not something that... The reason why the left deplatforms the right is that the left says, in 10 years, we're not going to have to deal with the right. We can just leave them behind. And the right has to put together some reason why they're not going to be able to leave us behind. And it's got to be something better and more original than what we've been putting together right now. Now, it might be that the right presents itself in such a way that its mere presence forces the left to expose itself as hypocrites and intellectual cowards. And in that sense, perhaps the right can facilitate the early death of the white progressive, which I think is an end that should be devoutly wished for. But that still leaves open the question of, okay, so if white progressivism dies, what does the counter-progressive movement look like in America? What does that mean? So Leo the Great for $5 asks, did you read Benedict XVI's letter? I read parts of it. It was interesting. He said a lot of things that everyone has known for a long time. But then one wonders why he resigned. Did he not... if he was politically pressured into resigning, did he not understand that the forces that we're politically pressuring a pope to resign. We're probably allied with the same forces that are causing the sex abuse crisis. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if the church is what it says it is, then a force that so distinctly usurps the chair of Saint Peter has to, in some part, be demonic. I certainly think that the sex abuse crisis has hints of the demonic in it. And but then just it's just the situation that we're in. The situation, and I don't know. I don't believe in conspiracies. I don't believe in. But I do believe in historical coincidence. And the historical coincidence, the clown world that we're in right now, is just the institutional power structure has no answers to anything that we're dealing with right now. It's just has a series of platitudes. That's all it has. I wish I could make sense of Benedict XVI's letter. My advice for Christians is to organize, and I'm trying to help insofar as I can. Obviously, when you get offline and go into the real world, you immediately feel much smaller. You become a singleton once more because, unlike the left, the right can't just instantiate power because everyone is afraid of exposure. And that's one of the benefits of having the cathedral at your back, is that if ContraPoints, the YouTube channel, becomes a force on YouTube, and it's much more a force than I am, then Natalie Wynn, the person, immediately becomes a person that people in real life have to respect. The Economist has to respect Natalie Wynn because they're a progressive YouTuber, because they're a progressive YouTuber. They've done something great. Sean and Jen, and Sean, I bring up Sean and Jen because with ContraPoints Natalie Wynn thing, it's like, oh well, Dave, did you really do as much as Natalie Wynn ContraPoints did to get their channel? They dropped out of professional life to dedicate themselves, to put their face out there on the internet, opposing the alt-right, and they do all these fancy costume changes, and they have all these camera angles, and they script their videos. They don't just kind of have a broad outline and then edit it around to get it to look like something more coherent. And you know, as much as you put into this channel, you still are you still have another job, you still, you have community ties. You're not 110% in on YouTube. And one of the problems is, of course, is that I don't think it's responsible for a man who has a family in his immediate, in his likely future, to go 110% in on YouTube. I would have to make as much as ContraPoints. Actually, not that much, but I'd have to make as much as ContraPoints. And then I'd have to have some kind of assurance that the income wouldn't be terminated the way that Sargon's was. I don't know. The situation becomes more complicated when you're trying to plan for dependence and not just an expensive surgery where you castrate yourself. It's not the same thing. But anyway, let's just say, like, with ContraPoints, the argument can always be made that I didn't go in all in enough to get that kind of attention. But for someone like Sean and Jen, or Sean as it is now, Sean's videos are crap. I make better videos than that. I put more effort into my videos, and my thoughts are much better thought out than Sean and Jen's videos. And they get paid very well, and they get promoted by the progressive mainstream because they are progressive. Nobody if the Young Turks, and nobody who's allied with any of the major progressive publications who watches Sean and Jen is embarrassed that they watch Sean and Jen. But the people in the Federalists are embarrassed of me. Why? Why are people in the Federalists embarrassed of me? And that just goes back to the thing. And this is the situation that we have to deal with. Okay, I have to go keep on answering super chats here. Rashad Abdul Salam, isn't the solution to surviving progressivism stockpiling guns and food in a cabin in the Midwest woods as a fallback for potential social collapse? No. Thank you very much for your contribution of $5. But let me fill everyone in on a little bit of a problem with this. A little bit of a problem with the prepper thing. Prepping If you do not know that the apocalypse or the collapse is coming in the next 5 years, prepping for it in the sense not like I'm not saying like don't own a gun. Like, okay, own a gun, get good at firing it, and then pay $200 for a 72-hour kit, and have an escape plan in the event of a disaster, and hedge your portfolio with gold a little bit, right? That's good, right? So, of course, prepare for black swan events. But if you go all in on prepperism, you will lose an enormous amount of money. If you do this thing, like people have talked about, and I talked about this a little bit on the Cana Society live stream, I've heard stories about people who went into the woods and they put all their savings into ammo and toilet paper and dehydrated food, and it came to nothing. They were sitting there with no investments, with no power, waiting, hoping for some kind of disaster that they had no idea would come in the immediacy. And in the meantime, their communities fell apart. Their children became progressive. They had no influence, and they became worse than that. They became somebody that the progressives could point to and go, look at what right-wing ideas did to people. This person's life is a disaster. And that's not what people need. People need upstanding leaders. People need other peers and mentors that they can actually feel some admiration for. And that starts with understanding that you need to live in this world and put your money in a place that can actually help your family. And not just in the event that Cloverfield happens. Son of Tiamat for $2. Debate with academic agent on distributism. Oh boy. Good. I think distributism has some good ideas. I would not relish taking on an academic agent in that. We're going to get into one of these new atheist things. I don't think distributism is the kind of thing where it's like, well, I don't know. It depends how the debate was framed. It might be interesting. I wouldn't dare do it unless I made a video on distributism first, because I feel that there are a number of really good ideas that come out of the distributist tradition, and I need to make sure that those get out there before I have hanging above my head the inevitable clusterfuck that will be an academic agent debate against me on an issue of economics. An issue, by the way, that neither of us are experts on, so I don't know why anyone would want to see us debate those issues. But anyway, thank you for your contribution. Pilled Knight for $10 says, I think you got Nick all wrong. RW Zoomer, right-wing Zoomers have their own brand. Nick has helped mainstream so many trad views and sacrificed an easy career to do so. His personality is genuine. I've met him in real life. Well, I respect that. And if you tell me that you've met him in real life and he's genuine, then you are the expert on that. My opinion on Nick Fuentes is worth absolutely nothing, because all I know him from is the manufactured persona he has in his videos. Nick Fuentes' channel is not significantly larger than mine, which is pretty small when it comes to YouTubers. I mean, it's not incredibly small, but it's not large, right? Hey, if he is helping, and this goes for anyone, right? If someone is genuinely helping you, in the sense that they're giving you support to make your life better, they're giving you support to continue to grow in your understanding of God and Christ, and if they're helping you reconnect with your family, then don't pay attention to what I say. I'm just giving you my opinion on them, my gut feeling, my gut reaction. If this is working for you, maybe your situation is radically different than me. Maybe the situation of the Zoomers is radically different than it is for millennials. I mean, more and more of that just might be the case. Like, I grew up in California, so I saw a little bit of this stuff. I saw a little bit of this white privilege language creep down into, it was just starting to become a thing when I was in high school. And then when you're in college, everything's so crazy anyway. Do you really notice it? But I don't know what it's like to be 16 I mean, you would have heard about white privilege and evil white men since you were like 8. I can't. I mean, I know certain things aren't possible. I know being vindictive is never a good strategy in any age. But at the same time, maybe that particular generation needs some kind of support, some kind of way of putting things that I'm not aware of as a millennial. But I will say this: Nick Fuentes, to me, he doesn't feel new. To me, he feels old. To me, he talks like a boomer conservative does, with Zoomer opinions. Now, I can't speak for Zoomers, but that doesn't strike me as being kind of. Doesn't. Again, if you have an experience with this guy, this is where sawdust. But that just doesn't seem to really conform to this narrative that Nick is the wave of the future that my 30-year-old boomer soul can't quite comprehend. And that doesn't mean it's not true. God knows that there are many things that my 30-year-old boomer soul can't understand about this generation. Leo the Great for $5 says, "What is the meaning of the song Canon in D, and why is it played during weddings?" Yeah, we when I got married, I had that song banned. That's so overused. It's the one-hit wonder from the Baroque era. Oh, Catholic wench. I see Catholic wench in the chat. Oh, of course. Oh, okay. I missed your call, Catholic wench. Yeah, I called you earlier, but I think I might have. I must have missed your. Well, this is just the life of a YouTuber. Once the live streams start, the personal calls have to go on hold. But I don't know, Catholic wench, maybe you can answer this in the chat. If I see your reply to this, what is the deal of Pachelbel's Canon in D, and why does everyone have it in weddings? I mean, before that it was, what was it? What? I forget which composer did the... Was it a... Is the song that everyone associates with weddings, was that from Midsummer Night's Dream? I don't know. MJR Schneider for $20 Canadian says, "The whole right-wing cooties thing has been in full force in Canada recently, with even milquetoast cons like Scheer and Keeney being called... Is it Keeney? Kenny? Being called far-right for once breathing the same air as Faith Goldie. What does that mean for us?" Okay, I'll tell you what this means for us. It means that the short term is going to suck, but if we can ride this out, we can deal a fatal blow to the white progressives. All we need to do is be reasonable and nice, and not the monsters they say we are. If they call us monsters, all we have to do is stand up in front of them and go, "We are not the monsters you say that we are. We are people, and your attempt to dehumanize us is bad faith." And if that's the dynamic, this is how it's going to work. And I need to take some time to answer this question. This cooties strategy works really well as long as there's very, very intelligent people at the helm that make sure that it's not overused. I always use the analogy between the Tywin land. This is Game of Thrones, so people don't watch the show. But in the show Game of Thrones, in the family that everyone dislikes, the Lannisters, there is a grandfather who's very wise and Machiavellian called Tywin Lannister, and then there's a grandchild called Joffrey, who's a spoiled brat who abuses the power. So Tywin is able to essentially he understands that you have to marshal power in order to use it. But Joffrey just spends it recklessly, and he essentially degrades the power that he receives. So this idea that they're going to play right-wing cooties and continuously deplatform us, it's going to work great as long as the 140 IQ people that at one point ruled the roost in progressive media continuously hold the reins and decide where is the proper place to use this and where are improper places to use it. When are we going to overextend ourselves by using this? But eventually those smart people are going to die, they're going to get replaced, and the temptation to be reckless with it will become overwhelming. So what happens when Ben Shapiro shows up on your campus, and they've already done this, and you don't like the fact that he has pro-life views? Well, maybe you can shut him down the same way they shut down Richard Spencer. And what if you do that to Abby Johnson? What if you do that to your random pro-life president who's, a 23-year-old blonde chick? What happens when there's a video of you socking her in the face because she says that women should have abortions? This temptation to use strong-arm deplatforming tactics on more and more sympathetic victims will eventually cause this thing to collapse, and then the right wing is going to have an ability to recast itself and retake the direction away from the left. It's an inevitability, but it's going to mean that the short term is going to suck. I know there are people who are trying to give me non-super chat questions, but I don't know if I have time to read them. Well, maybe we'll circle around and get there. Louis the 14th for $5 says, have you watched Counterpoints? Anita Sarkeesian 2.0 by Prince of Queens. This seems to expand your videos on Patreon censorship and Anita Sarkeesian. How long is the video, Louis? I might watch it right now. I have time to kill. I originally did this video because I thought I had time to kill because I figured that Catholic Wench had gone to bed early. But well, I might as well just hold the stream as planned. I can see Catholic Bunch in the chat right now. But maybe we can take a look at the video because I did want to see if I could watch a video with you guys and do a running commentary track on it. David Soup, but yeah, it's on my recommended videos, and I did want to watch it. David Supernor. I'm sure you've spoken about, for $5 American. Thank you very much. I'm sure you've spoken about this before, but why are you so hard on Nick Fuentes? If you could direct me to a Q&A you addressed it in, I don't know of any. Okay, I guess I'm kind of. The answer, David, is I don't have a good reason to be hard on Nick Fuentes. I have an emotional reason. I have a gut reason to be hard on Nick Fuentes. I have a bunch of little anecdotes that where people who don't like him have told me that he was one of the reasons why there aren't any more hard right female YouTubers, although I'm not so sure how much to believe that. I'm highly skeptical of that claim. And I don't have any good solid reason for being against Nick Fuentes. It's just personally the tone clashes with my desired way of talking about things. So, to be quite clear, I really have shit on Nick. So I am kind of talking out of my ass and from an emotional point of view. I'm just trying to be straight with people. But I feel at the same time that saying that I don't like the presentation of somebody is not an attack on them. That's just a statement of a preference. I mean, if I didn't like the style of someone else's video, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. If you like Nick Fuentes, I don't know of anything that he said that's been wrong. Of course, I don't watch his channel, so how would I? Okay. So, thank you, David Supernuri. So you've already addressed this on the stream. Thank you for both your super chats. So, Charlemagne for $20 says, your Capitalism is Magic video was stellar and Magical Words is a great series. Have a pig tip, you deserve it. Enjoy yourself. Well, thank you, Charlemagne. Well, hey, I'll put it this way. I am trying to start a right-wing project called the Canaan Society, and all of the money I make from this channel is going to go into its coffers. I don't know. Largely, what we're going to try to do with this is we're going to try to find other charities to give it to. But if there's any expenses, then I'd like to take your super chats and find some way of effectively plugging this back into the ideas community here on YouTube and on the internet. I see Catholic Wench says we did not have it at our wedding. Ooh, I think she's referring to. Well, I'm sorry. I should say, Charlemagne. Thank you so much, and I owe you an interview. I'd love to. I should say I don't owe you one. I would love to have you on and hear your opinions. Although I imagine they're probably very similar to mine. Catholic Wench, I see you scoffing at Canon in B, Canon in D, but I didn't see. Did you answer? Okay, here's your answer. So Catholic Wench says the reason why Canon in D is popular is it's got a vanilla chord progression. Yeah, I think kind of explains it, right? I mean, it's like the power chords of the classical world. Uh, I mean, it's very it's like lush and florid, and it's something you might listen to if you know it's a zero T song, and I don't know why. I don't know why people like such feminine songs for weddings. Catholic Wench, can you remind me what our wedding music was? I do know that we had Lord Beyond All Praising, which uses that amazing melody from Holst's Planets. And it's an amazing hymn, and it's very masculine too. I mean, Holst associated this music with the god Jupiter's the apex of masculinity. Da, 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 da. I'm not gonna actually. I won't hurt people's ears by trying to hum it, but um, people will associate it with a regal hymn because it sounds regal. Die Hard Dookie for $5 distributist. What is your opinion on the Yang Gang and people switching over to the grab the bag meme? This is the most unoriginal thought I've had here. It's a transition on the right, uh, to being from being conservative and preservers of an order to being people who are trying to grab what they can and get out on the lifeboats. And I sympathize with that. This is sort of for people who like my Mencius Moldbug video. This is the transition that we're talking about, where the employees of a corporation go from people who are in, for the most part, because obviously this is an individual basis, right? But they go from being believers in the corporation's ability to succeed to people who are saying, okay, this corporation's going down. How do I get out of this situation with as much lucre as I possibly can? And essentially like making a margin call on the endeavor of Western civilization. We know that things are, profanity alert, we know things are fucked. So let's try to vacate the premises. Let's be the first out of the barn that's burning. The difficulty is that as long as progressive white people are the predominant political force on the stage in America, their number one political goal is to convince everyone else that white non-progressives are worse than they are, because their entire power structure relies on character assassinating white non-progressives. The reason why, and I'm not being cynical, the reason why a diverse coalition of people always seems to have white progressives at its helm is because white progressives has assured the other coalition members, many of who are genuinely reactionary. I've pointed out many times that black nationalists and I mean even obviously Latino nationalists are reactionary, but even revolutionaries in non-white communities tend to be reactionary. They tend to actually, I agree with them more than I agree with white progressives, but the reason why they've agreed to go under the yoke of the all-knowing white progressive like Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton is because these people have convinced them that the white non-progressives are monsters. We're terrible and we have to be suppressed. And so the thing is that the difficulty for white America is that they're not going to inherit anything. Or the whole Kurt Doolittle, John Mark idea that when things collapse, you will inherit this country is not true, because the progressives will literally sell it to China before they let you inherit it. But the other thing that's going to be very, very difficult is it's going to be very difficult to take a lot of money out of the system, right? And that's not impossible. And the instinct isn't totally unwarranted, but it's going to be very hard to it's going to be very hard to do the margin call move where you're out of the door first, because keep in mind, while the barn is burning, like you've got the progressive white community with its arm holding you in a sleeper hold. You're not faster than anyone else. So, the Mendelssohn Ballad is from Midsummer's Night Dream. I see someone say that. So, here's Catholic ones. We had Bach's Jesu, A Joy of Man's Desiring. That's a great one. Yeah, now I remember. Man, I'll tell you. People who are married will know this. Like, your wedding is just like a blur. Because there's so many things on your mind. And you're trying to shake everyone's hand and, kind of contrive the ceremony that, like, you literally have to be reminded of everything. It's a great experience. Everyone get married. But be the traditionalist you want to see in the world. But man, the gaps I have in my memory are really quite extraordinary. The things I have to be reminded of, right? And it's not that this doesn't have an emotional back, so it's incredibly emotional, but it's all, the specifics are very blurry. And of course, I dearly love my wonderful and beautiful wife, Catholic Wench. Everyone subscribe to her channel. We are, as of now, separated, but we are going to continue our quest to play retro games from the era of video game history when I still played video games. But if people like that stuff, we will be doing some retro gaming on Catholic Wench's channel. And she is very beautiful and the love of my life. So everyone subscribe to Catholic Wench if you feel so inclined. Leo the Great for $5. Canon in D is two opposing notes equating to two sexes coming together with struggle. It is marriage. Is that so? Well, I've never heard that explanation. Music theory wise? Oh, yeah, I see. Music theory wise, I'll have to have Catholic Wench confirm that. Maybe that's the case. Is it indeed two different chord patterns interlacing, the two made one? I like that theory. I like that theory a lot. Tian Zhao for $5 Canadian. Do you think that the right wing has the time to wait for intelligent leftists to die? But then violence might be our only course of action. Well, I mean, I don't know what's the other option. I mean, the intelligent leftists are going to make it very, very hard to move. Now, okay, you could convince the intelligent leftists. Actually, I think that actually might happen. I think that I'm wondering. I think the white progressive in the form that we are seeing it, they might not be. I feel they're about to open Pandora's box. They might be a victim of their own success. If they win in 2020, they might be a victim of their own success. Maybe I'm underestimating the depths of which they'll stoop in the path to achieve their progressivism. But with the exception of people like Thought Slime, I'm wondering how many people want to follow this bowl, this bowl of cereal down to the last bite, so to speak. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure it's going to remain crispy to the last bite. I think they're going to get some sog in there, and by that sog I mean an obvious. In order to preserve their coalition, they'll obviously have to violate a core progressive value, to the point where they will not be able to understand their role in the progressive coalition as anything other than a total patsy and for lack of a better word, a total cuck. Even though, of course, like I said, I don't love the word cuck, but I mean, people know what it means, and it means someone who will sacrifice principle for political expediency. I mean, what else could be more, cuck than that? Oh, thoughts on the current for £2 Tales of Ruin says thoughts on the current Brexit debacle. Did And I really should have Endeavor. Who do I know? I should have Endeavor and Merchant Struggle talk about this. But did anyone actually think Brexit was going to happen? I guess when when I saw Brexit, and this is so funny because it happened. Brexit happened when I still hypothetically was a Buckleyite conservative. So hypothetically, I should have had faith that Brexit would have worked. But I saw Brexit and I'm like, there's no way that this is actually going to go through. Even when they won, I'm like, okay, they're just going to have the election again. I was skeptical of this. And so I guess I was sort of expecting this to happen. And I'm kind of, I guess I always thought that the dissident right and the people who were dissident right before I was dissident right, the people who were looking at Brexit and going and slow clapping it in 2016, I always thought that the reason why they were slow clapping it is not that they actually thought that they would get Brexit. I thought they were slow clapping it because they understood that the optics of not getting Brexit after a clear popular vote for Brexit would expose the ruling class as being intellectually bankrupt. I thought that was always the point. And I think it has done that. Now, I don't know. I never met a British person. And by British, I mean English, Welsh, Scottish, or I guess the Scottish are an exception in this. But I've never met somebody from the United Kingdom who did not think the Parliament was totally corrupt. But it seems that even on top of that, there's been some kind of turning point. I don't think we've seen the end of it. I don't know what's going to happen. So Radio Plastic for $2 says recommended reading list. I almost have too many recommended reading lists. So here's my chance for a plug. I'm working on a project called the Canis Society. We've created a website, and on the website we are just starting up a Wikipedia. Now, I've had multiple people hand me reading lists, reactionary reading lists. I haven't read all the books there. I did a unlisted video that goes through my own bookshelf, and my own bookshelf is incomplete because I give away books that I really like. So a lot of the things that I love aren't there. And I also have a few reading lists that I wrote up myself, both a long time ago and more recently. Most recently, indeed, I gave a Christian reading list to Aidan Paladin because she asked me what were my recommendations for books to give to people who were considering becoming Christian. And I wrote her like a little blurb. My chief ambition is to unify all of these lists into one Wikipedia page where people give a rundown of their favorite reactionary books with little blurbs and reasons why they like those books, so that people can go to that site and see not just one person's top 10 list, but a lot of different people's input. I'm not so sure that I can give you 5 books that would be great starts if you're an atheist who wants to see about deism, or if you're a deist who wants to explore Christianity, or maybe if you're a liberal conservative Christian who wants to get into reactionary thinking, or I could give you books for all of those types of things. But it's hard to come up with the list. And my only solution to that is perhaps the Wikipedia thing. As a matter of fact, I need to post at the end of this in the low bar here. I'm going to include, so everyone knows that I got banned off of Discord. There's a new Canis Society Discord server. Even the Canis Society Discord server that we used to have is essentially a headless cockroach because of the fact that the person who owns it is banned. So nobody can ultimately make more admins, which means that it's useless. And so we had to make a new one and start over from scratch. Now, I'm eventually going to try to get off of Discord, but in the meantime, that's what we have to deal with. Okay, so no comment for $10. As a lifelong atheist and ex-progressive, I am realizing the immense value of religion as a pillar to live my life by. What can I do as a non-believer to find God without lying to myself? Well, don't lie to yourself. I can give you my own... That's an excellent question. I was writing an essay that I haven't finished called An Open Letter to an Honest Agnostic or an Honest Atheist. And I haven't finished it. It got way too long. And when things get too long, they have a tendency to sink to the bottom of your to-do list, because you always want to finish projects that you can make measurable progress on every time. I would start by reading Plato and Socrates and seeing how they struggle with the divine. We are going to start The Abolition of Man, which I think that if you're an atheist, is a good place to start with understanding natural law. And I think from a natural law point of view, you can come to an understanding of God. I think you can come to an understanding of a philosopher's God through logical arguments, and I think those are sound arguments. They've never been refuted. Going from a deism or a deist perspective to a Christian perspective is tough. I think it's hard. I think the evidence for Christ is very good. But the problem is that very good by what standard? Because always, as modern people, always in the back of our minds is this incredible historical skepticism that progressivism has encouraged in us, to think that anything that was written from a long time ago just has so much uncertainty to it that the rank uncertainty of a proposition should overwhelm our consideration of any of it as true. I would always consider I think the first step is to properly identify yourself as a spiritual seeker in the tradition of Christendom. Read things like the Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment and Middlemarch and the great religious thinkers of the 19th century. The 19th century is really interesting because in people like George Eliot and Dostoevsky and Charles Dickens, you find a theism that is 100% intellectual and far greater in its wisdom than anything contemporary Western culture has ever been able to muster. And at the same time, it's 100% orthodox. It's before World War One, when this very same tradition sort of transmogrified very slowly into what we now know as progressivism. And I'd say that's where I would start. I would say stay tuned. I'm going to try to help people out in the I'm a lifelong ex-progressive atheist. Just, I would say remember that you are a subject of Christendom. You are a seeker in the spiritual tradition that is Christianity, even if you cannot take up the mantle of Christianity yet. And I think always remember that is something in and of itself, that you're not alone. I think that people in your position, and this is the problem. I think, and a lot of the reason why Christians failed in the early atheist debate had to do with this. No comment, the person who posted under no comment, is the example of the person, the seeker, that Christians are duty bound to help and minister to. I get the sense that they're ethnically from historic Christendom, and I think that there's a political loyalty that is, I wouldn't say it's under religion to be sure, but it's something that's not simply religious. It's also, in some sense, I don't want to say genetic, but it comes from an ethnic tradition that's not simply religious. I'll say that. But Christians, I think, are duty bound to help people in your situation. Now, I think what happened with the new atheists was this, and that is that the new atheists used the willingness of Christians to sort of help people in a mode of genuine seeking to come up with an optical formula that was disastrous for Christians. If you see Christopher Hitchens debate against all of these William Lane Craig style people, that's just fully on display. He's basically scoffing at them for being stupid, and they're as they basically prattle off C.S. Lewis and rehashes of the cosmological argument, which is not what Christopher Hitchens is talking about. He never talks about that. I mean, he hand waves at it, but he's not interested in that. He's interested in the narrative that Christians are stupid. And I don't think that Christians are duty bound to help those people. But in your case, remember that you are part of Christendom still. And remember that Christians have to be loyal to your interests and to your spiritual quest. And I think that's just a place to start. So Brandon Bowers for $5. No specific question. Just wanted to give charity. Thanks, Brandon. You're a regular in our society, so I certainly will be talking more with you in the future. Oh, wow, it's already late, but we can keep this going. I hope Catholic wench. Oh, we'll talk tomorrow. Speaking of Catholic wench, pray that immigration goes through so I can be with my husband. Catholic wench. You can't use damn it and pray in the same sentence. Aw. I'm sorry, I don't want to have a moment on stream, but I'm missing Catholic wench. Oh. But YouTube calls Leo the Great for $2. What do you think of Owen Benjamin? And okay, I see someone who's meant so Owen Benjamin, is he Owen Jones and Owen Benjamin? Is Owen Benjamin the comedian? Who there's one Owen who's a gay Guardian columnist, and there's another one who's like a conservative comedian. Owen Benjamin, I seem to think that he's all right. I don't know much about him though. I wish I could give you a better answer. I heard someone ask me, and this was a not super chat, but they asked me what they thought of the recent debate on academic agent stream that featured my good friend Endeavor about monarchism versus democracy. I mean, this just shows you, and this is what's the most important part of a debate. The most important part of the debate is the resolution, because who cares? I don't want to be like snide. I don't want to be elitist, right? But like, I have never taken a position on democracy versus monarchy because it's such a stupid question. You get through that debate, and I listened to almost half of it on my drives to and from work. I mean, I didn't listen to it all the way through here because you got a few minutes here, a few minutes there, but I tried to get most of it under my belt. And at the end of the day, like, you realize that the pro-democratic side, this is the side that's defending democracy, they think that democracy in the West is deeply broken. They think that democracy going forward is going to have huge problems unless we restrict the franchise, which has never happened. At least, I mean, it hasn't happened. I don't know if it's ever historically happened, period. Although I'm very cautious about making a statement that's as emphatic as that. I don't know if society has ever gone from an expanded franchise to a contracted one, short of a pathway through a dictator first. But they basically admitted that democracy was broken. Their proposition was that an optimal system, again, and when I say optimal, I mean optimal in a purely hypothetical sense, and this is always why political conversations that exist in this hypothetical realm are so ridiculous. And it's meaningful. I mean, obviously, democracy is not like communism. Democracy and when I say democracy, I mean democracy as a democratic republic, not as some kind of direct democracy thing, which has never been done on a large scale and couldn't be done on a large scale. But Republican democracy is an actual thing that has actually existed, and people like Sargon who defend it, they're not like the communists who are defending a system that they don't understand. They actually know what they want. They're actually speaking meaningful words when they defend it. But still, if democracy is broken and you've got no way to fix it other than to do something that will never happen and can never be brought about democratically, then what does it mean to be for democratic republicanism over monarchy? And what's equally ridiculous, and the reason why I'm not just on the monarchy side of this debate, and the reason why this is not just, oh, I thought the monarch side were correct, is that the monarchists, for the most part, also realized that you can't just install a monarchy. And I think that the strongest part about the pro-monarchy side is that there seems to be something about monarchs in particular that makes them more benign than dictators that have democratic pretension. People said the Democrats thought that this was, I apologize for rambling about a debate stream, but that probably very few people have seen. But Sargon was talking about this, and this is one of those debate things that it was a flop for the monarchists, but when you thought about it for 5 seconds, the monarchists sort of had the proper side of the argument, and the monarchist side will ask, well, at what time in British history were there people who could revolutionize British society as radically as Tony Blair and New Labour did in, what was it? They were elected in 1999 or 2000, somewhere around that time. Was it 97, I think, actually. When was the last time that happened? And Sargon's like, oh, well, plenty of times. Henry Tudor did that, Henry VII. And there were some revolutionary kings, and arguably they may have. But, I mean, I think that if you're talking about who radically reshaped British society the most, and as destructively as Tony Blair did, the only one who comes up in my mind is Oliver Cromwell. And again, what was Oliver Cromwell? He was a dictator that ruled with democratic pretensions. So was Robespierre. And that seems to be the worst of both worlds. The dictator that thinks he's a president is just the worst of both possible worlds. Now that's interesting, but the problem is that in this practical political debate, neither side actually thought that their prescriptions were an actual solution to the situation that we face right now. And so we were having a very, very abstract debate. And the question is, what does that ultimately mean? I don't exactly know. And that's a problem. Kiwich for $10 New Zealand. White shit libs are the real problem. We saw that play out in New Zealand after the terror attack in Christchurch. Virtue signaling leftist prime minister. Yeah, I mean this is the white progressive, and I think white shiblib and white progressive are pretty much the same. By the way, when I say white progressive, I actually kind of don't mean communists. Because I'm pretty sure that there will always be white communists, like white out-and-out Antifa people. I'm talking about, like, the ContraPoints types, right? The types that play this ridiculous line, where their line literally is everything in our society is screwed up and needs to be torn down. But vote for Hillary Clinton, guys. Elizabeth Warren. Kamala Harris. They're going to set everything straight, guys. It's guys, we got it. We got it. The solution to the West's problem is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris will make race not be a thing in America. I mean, what is Kamala Harris going to do? It's going to be Barack Obama 2.0, except as opposed to getting that, and in Barack Obama's case, there was this period between 2008 and 2012 where Barack Obama seemed to be kind of being the moderate left president that he had the possibility of being the unifier that he always wanted to be, or that he was presented as in 2008. And after he won in 2012, he realized that scare tactics from the media could get him reelected, even even with policies that were incredibly unpopular with the American people, and he understood that he could get it with everything. And what did he use political power for? Well, he uses political power to foment to foment a racial conflict. And I say this as a person who doesn't like race, and I'm very sensitive to demographic concerns. I have no illusions about diversity not being divisive for countries generally, but I don't particularly fasten on race emotionally as some kind of thing. And it's undisputable that in 2016, Barack Obama, more than anyone else, and I should say Barack Obama and Eric Holder, saw this country sliding into a racial conflict, and they just poured gasoline on the fire, for no reason. Because they thought they'd get a better turnout in the election. And it totally backfired. I can see someone saying that Catholic Wench, they saw Catholic Wench and I play StarCraft. Yeah, I know I suck at it. Good thing I'm not going up against Destiny in a StarCraft game. That's all I can say. Although, I don't know. I think the next game we're going to play is Medieval Total War. I think we're going to beat the Holy Roman Empire. We're going to commune with our ancestors, Catholic Wench and I. We are both Southern Germans. We both need to show the world that First Reich was best Reich. Please don't ban me, YouTube. But I mean, it's true. The Holy Roman Empire. I am a. If I were transported back to 1100, I probably would be a Giebelling. You know, I'm no. I do think there was a dual mandate, as Dante believed, and call me a heretic for believing that, right? David Supernor. Here's some money for the Canaan Society's Recusant Fellowship. Right-wingers need to build as many support structures as possible. Why, thank you. Well, thanks. We really can use it. Okay, guys. So I'm working at the financials. I will, if I can get the sole proprietorship paperwork passed, I will publish reports about where the money is going. I just need to make sure that I can publish a bank statement that does not have my real name on it. Now, of course, the federal government has to. I have to register it with the feds and with the state as progressive and as pos as my state is. So they're going to know who owns this, but I want to be able to show people that we're actually doing something. Now, right now, like I can't. We don't make enough money to hire somebody, and I'm not so sure who we would hire if we did hire somebody. I can pay people for services like transcription. I can compensate people who have a speaker fee if I want to get them to give us I mean, I would pay Jordan Peterson $250. He had a speaker fee at one point. I would pay, what was it, like $300? I'd pay $300 to have him on. I certainly have enough money raised for that, and that would be a perfectly good use of the money. I would pay $300, and I'd dedicate all the super chats to some charity that we felt was right-wing friendly. And this is another thing too. We need to have some way of understanding which charities are friendly to right-wing causes and which ones are hostile. And that is something that a Wikipedia would be a great thing for. Now, I think obviously I make enough money for this channel that I can use the money to support the very, very minimal amount to maintain a server. I both have my own server and also for backup, and also a server on just a raw service thing like Bluehost or whatever. And that should be sufficient for our needs, at least for the present time. But thank you very much for your contribution. Every time, this is the reason why, if we can show society that we are building things and we are not just internet trolls, the left's strategy of pure deplatforming and pure running from their opponents is going to eventually backfire on them. Thoughts on Jay Dyer? I get asked this. David Supernor says thoughts on Jay Dyer. I get asked this every single time. I like him in his religious outlook. I like the fact that he's answered atheists very well in the past. The esoteric stuff. I'm just really not into esoteric stuff. Maybe this is more of an East versus West thing. As a Catholic, I am highly suspicious of esoteric stuff, even the Canin Society stuff. I mean, I like the idea that it has the trappings of a secret society, but I don't like secrecy. I want everything to be above ground. I just naturally distrust the secret society thing, and I think Catholic Wench is going to back me up on this. Uh, I mean, I don't know. I think the Knights of Columbus do a great work, but there might be some disagreements within the home for that. Michael Murphy for $5 says, have a conversation with Tom Woods. Absolutely. I think I've reached out to Tom Woods. I don't think I got a response back. He's the guy with the Twitter account, right? Everyone loves him. Arena Hopeful for $2 says, what do you think about William Lane Craig? I personally, I love William Lane Craig. I'll say this about him. He's a living representation of why arguments are that discourse politically is 10% cultural positioning, 10% dialectic, and 90% rhetoric and cultural positioning. William Lane Craig was the right person with the right arguments, but culturally, imagistically, narratively, he was exactly what the new atheists wanted. The new atheists, they didn't understand this, because if they understood this, they wouldn't have been devoured by progressive SJWism in 2013 and 2014. But in 2008, they operated under this idea. They loved nothing more than to have some Christian with a shit-eating grin, and I don't want to cast aspersions upon either Red Staters or Protestants, because they're both deeply good people, better than me. I'm a cynical Blue Stater. I mean, I God help me for my sins in this regard. But optically speaking, the Christian educated Red Stater was exactly who they were waiting for. They were waiting for that well educated Red Stater to march out and go, I want to save you. I want to give you Thomas Aquinas' cosmological argument, and they can just scoff at it. And Christopher Hitchens did scoff. Christopher Hitchens didn't refute the cosmological argument. He scoffed at it for 20 minutes, called Christians stupid, brought up the Inquisition, and convinced everyone that Hitler was a devout Catholic. That's how he won. Once Hitler is a devout Catholic, does it matter? Once all of the bad things in history were Christian, does it matter that it's true? I don't know if atheists realize this, but if, once all the bad things in history were Christian becomes a legitimate way to discard the greatest thinkers in the Western canon, or any thinker, even one who's rehearsing it with knowledge like William Lane Craig, or rehearsing it secondhand like a lot of the apologists that fought Christopher Hitchens. Once all bad things were Christian, it's a very short leap to get to all bad things were white and male, which is inevitably what the argument became, which is why we're in the situation we are right now. And I can't believe atheists didn't see that they were walking right into it. And what does TJ the Amazing Atheist answer to the SJW? Vote for Hillary Clinton? The last I heard of him, I stopped watching him in 2016. I never agreed with him, but I stopped watching him even to find things to disagree with in 2016. And when I left TJ, his solution to our current problems was hold your nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. I don't like her, but better than Trump, I guess. And then somehow it'll be the 90s again. And then, yeah. And guess what, guys? Kamala Harris isn't going to bring the 90s back either. And Kamala Harris isn't even going to bring 2008 back. I mean, again, progressives like Innuendo Studios give people like me shit for following the nostalgia cycle. Progressive nostalgia is just incremented 30 years as opposed to the 50s, or it's incremented 10 years as opposed to the 50s, like the 60s. And then after the 60s, it's Bill Clinton. And after Bill Clinton, it's Barack Obama. I mean, I guess it's more forward looking because they essentially are, they literally are on the side of history. They're on the side of degeneration. Thank you for your contribution. I am going to take a little break, and I, since this is a late stream, I don't feel bad about going late. I don't feel bad about just keeping it running. Don't don't feel under any pressure to keep on giving me super chats. This is my time to answer your questions, but if no one minds just going on, you guys can watch it later. I was going to take a look at Innuendo Studios. For some reason, despite having worked a long time today, I just seem to have a lot of energy right now. And I'm not tired at all, so I just as soon keep on going with this if no one has any objections. Yeah. Again, if you guys have to go to bed or if you're in Europe, by all means, watch this later. I'm not going to take this video down unless unless someone bombs it, and unless someone bombs it with things that will take the channel down. Shumengde for $5. Speaking of monarchists, what do you think of Charles Colum? I found Molbug and Colum have a lot in common. With their Whig history takes, I like Colum a lot. I've talked to him on Facebook. We agreed to do an interview this summer sometime. Now that I have a much less flexible schedule, I have a lot harder time doing interviews. And I'm afraid for people who have more or less the typical view on this, I'm afraid that my live streams are going to push a lot later. They're just going to take a lot later. It just has to do with my work schedule more than anything else. I'm going to take a little bit of a break here, and I'm going to grab a drink, and then I might take a look at some videos. So, super chat or not, I will finish out all the super chats before I end the stream. We'll see how much longer this goes. I imagine I'm going to get tired at some point. Okay, guys, thanks for being patient. I assume I'm still coming in here. Okay. Yeah, I like Charles Colum. He strikes me as a guy that is just a good guy. You know, this is something that I think people need to internalize on the right, and it's something that, wait a second, excuse me. Forgot my beverage. But sorry to leave you guys on the cliffhanger. But there's something that people need to internalize on the right, and that is that there are such things as honest disagreements. There are distributists and capitalists and monarchists and Republicans, and we can all be part of the same right-wing coalition. We can all be on the same side. We can all respect each other. This is something that the left is forgetting in a really kind of funny way when you get right down to it. And it's something that the right can't afford to forget this thing. The list of our allies grows thin. Our optical problems are multiplying. The corporations are against us. And if my prediction for 2020 comes true, the government is soon to be against us as well. And if Kamala Harris is president, I think she'll spend she will get rid of people like me the first chance she gets. Now, I don't think she can get rid of me completely. I think that I can back up to alt tech, but I think that if someone like Kamala Harris becomes president, I think that there'll be a huge crosshair on my YouTube channel and really all right-wing YouTubers. I think she will work with corporate America to fully censor the internet if she can, to the extent that she can. And this whole community might become a fixture of, it might even become a fixture of the dark web. Who knows? Rod Howard for $20. Have you ever considered the tendency of technological development to lead to social condition which limit the autonomy of individuals, i.e. the invention of internet cars leading to internet cars becoming essential to live? That's a deep question, Rod. That's true. This becomes sort of part of the fundamental trade-off that Mulebug pointed out about technology, and that people have understood for the longest time. That when a technology comes into existence, it fundamentally limits the competence that's built into the human person. And at some point, we are losing more freedom than we are getting. Now, I think that the internet is something that enabled as many good things as it enabled bad things. And I might be somewhat different than many people. I think that we have to have an honest discussion about what parts of technology are good and bad. And I think that primitivists have a place on the right. Because every one of us is primitivists to a certain kind of technology. There isn't a single person in the world who, this is an illusion, and progressives are still under this illusion. Progressives are under this illusion. If technology occurs, you have to do it. You can't not do it. If that's the case, there are a number of hypothetical test cases where humanity is literally staring down the invention of technology that will immediately not just end humanity, but end all of existence. And you're literally telling me that there's no reality in which we cannot push that button to destroy all existence? I don't know, man. I don't buy it. I think that the right wing is essentially the only force in the world today that is actually taking seriously the questions of technology that are staring us in the face right now. I think that the left wing, despite its political power, has its head so far up its own rectum that it can't even see the problems that are coming, with the exception possibly of Yang. But even Yang doesn't really want to take on these questions. He just wants to throw money at people so they stop thinking about them. And the reason why Silicon Valley likes the left so much is the left is just stupid enough to not actually want to put any limitations on their power. And this is one thing that we have in common with Marxists. And if Marxists weren't busy trying to hit people like me, maybe we could make an alliance. But with the possible exception of the people from Zero Books, and even then, and this is one of my own intellectual failings, but with the possible exception of people from Zero Books, the communists don't want to talk to us. But if they did, we could start talking about this very question that Rod Howard brings up. The eventual need to have a proper response to what actually technology is doing to humanity. What technological elements enhance humanity? Which technological elements restructure humanity? They make humanity different, but not really better or worse in a spiritual sense. And what parts of technology actually strike at the core meaning of what it is to be human? This is the most fundamentally important thing, and the left is incapable of having this conversation. At least in the shitlib progressive ContraPoints dimension, it's incapable of having this conversation. ContraPoints will never have a serious conversation about what it means to be human. Or if they have that conversation, they will come to a meaningless question, because if they have to make a definitive claim about what it means to be human that's not relative, you can immediately make that claim about what it means to be a man or a woman, and they can't do that. They will make every single video of ContraPoints is a rehash of their earlier career. They've run out of ideas. They never had any ideas, but they've run out of them now, what few ideas they had. And they're making video after video after video about being transgender, which is there anything more boring? I mean, there's literally no identity in the world that's more boring than being transgender. It's literally the absence of identity. You don't even have an identity. I mean, it's like that line from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I'd divorce you if you existed. Transgenderism is almost too boring to properly react to. The only thing that's interesting about it is that it's part of a corrosive effect that's destroying things that are actually interesting. Men and women are interesting. Sex is interesting. Gender is so boring that it's not even a thing. It's literally nothing. Gender is literally nothing. It's literally amorphous feelings that have no external reference. What could be more boring than that? Yet we'll talk about that before we talk about the question that Rod Howard has. This is the question that the right needs to build coalition on answering. And I think there needs to be room for a lot of people. There need to be room for the Amish. There need to be room for whatever the non-violent version of the Unabomber is. there need to be room for people like me who like the text form of the internet. I like the 2003 IRC chat Linux version of the internet, but I'm kind of starting to get a little bit more skeptical of everything else past that point. And there needs to be room also, perhaps even for the Nick Lands, but the conversation needs to be, what is humanity going to look like, and how can we create a future for this world that has multiple versions of humanity, and also that has safeguards so that the people who are on the forefront of the technology that's allowed don't immediately turn this whole universe into gray goo, because they don't think that it's even possible for us to say no to a technological development. Keywitch, could you put for $10 New Zealand? Could you please have Pat Buchanan on your channel? His long form interviews are gold. Well, sign me up. Of course, I'd have Pat Buchanan on my channel. Do you think? I mean, I guess I always just considered he's out of my league. Does he have a speaking fee? I'd pay him for it. That's Pat Buchanan will come on my channel for a nominal speaking fee that's roughly around what Jordan Peterson is, and sure, guys, that's, with these, aside from the 20% that Google's taking out of these things, you can consider this live stream to officially fund that. But we'll see. We'll see what we can accomplish. But great idea. I always assumed that he was out of my league. TCAT for $5. Are you going to review the Dune movie when it comes out? Your Dune video was how I found out about you, and I like what you make to keep it up, dude. Well, yeah, I absolutely will review the Dune movie. Now, I know Catholic Wench went to bed, so she's not listening to this, but now when Catholic Wench and I are separated by national boundaries, immigration is keeping us apart. And as much as I don't want an open immigration policy, we are very legally doing this, and there's no reason to keep us in separate countries. I think it's kind of ridiculous. Believe me, if every immigrant had to go what we had to go through and had to show all the things we do and had as many reasons to be together as we did, there wouldn't be an immigration problem to the West, period. But anyway, one of the problems I've had is, how do I introduce Catholic Wench to Dune. I know she'd like it. I The book is not very friendly to her. I introduced her to Lovecraft by literally reading Lovecraft to her, and she seemed to like that. But reading Dune, it's really hard. I don't think the book reads very well in audiobook format. Frank Herbert's writing style, sometimes I love it. I find it enthralling, but sometimes it's kind of weird. He has a lot of thought. His characters have thought bubbles a lot, and I'm trying to figure out how I can get Catholic Wench to understand Dune so that she's not going into a potentially bad movie. And my prediction, despite the fact that I love the director they picked for it, I still believe fundamentally that it's unfilmable. Maybe if they do it in a miniseries, maybe if they give it a Peter Jackson 3-part movie, 12 hours, maybe they could do it then. It still seems unfilmable to me. But I will do a review of that. Now, maybe it will be like my Game of Thrones review where I literally just tell you what I think about it and have a static image over it, which is still to this date my most popular video, far and away. I put like zero effort into that thing. But I will do a review on Dune. I have half a mind to see Star Wars and do a review on it. The only reason why I didn't do a review of The Last Jedi is that by the time I saw Last Jedi, there already had been like 3 really prominent reviews tearing it to shreds and saying everything that we all know and said it a billion times before. And I felt like a total hack saying it one more time. Little did I know that you can get 1 million views easy by doing a review of The Last Jedi and saying what everyone has already said again. As a matter of fact, I recently watched a review of The Last Jedi that came out 2 months ago that is, the guy literally copies the jokes from Red Letter Media, and it still has like 1 million views. So apparently people don't get tired of this. I have half a mind to see the new Star Wars movie, which I know is going to be terrible, and doing a review of it. And I think Catholic Wench is going to want to see this movie. So maybe I'll see it, and I won't watch any reviews, and I'll see it relatively close to the time it comes out, and I'll just do a review of it right away. And so all the cliched things that I say about it will be somewhat fresh, and I can plausibly not feel like a hack for reviewing it. But that's my plan so far. Nolan Dole says, that was the best hitch slam I ever heard. I think you're for $5. Thank you for your contribution. That was the best hitch slam I ever heard. I think you're correct about that. Any other examples of similar self-owning situations? No, I am actually not the person who best slammed Christopher Hitchens. The best slam of Christopher Hitchens was in an article, and I wish I had written this article, but I didn't, from the now defunct magazine Thermidor. I don't know what happened to Thermidor. It seemed like a reasonable conservative magazine, but it now no longer exists. But I remember this because it was such a great takedown of Christopher Hitchens. I don't know who wrote it, and I can't look it up because the magazine's not there anymore. I don't know, did they post all the articles from Thermidor on some other site? Regardless, but Christopher Hitchens' entire career is irrelevant. He died in 2011, and then Barack Obama got reelected, and the left changed its song. There isn't a single thing that Christopher Hitchens made his life about that's relevant at all today. White Trotskyism? Are you fucking kidding me? White Trotskyism? White Trotskyism that sells to people who read Vanity Fair. Where are you on the left? You think you can be a politically incorrect person who writes for Vanity Fair and who speaks his mind and be a communist and be accepted by the left? You can't. You're for the Iraq War. There's no way people from, even from the relatively open-minded Zero books, are not going to listen to you. Moderate left, forget about it. Out. The only people who might have Christopher Hitchens are the people at the Federalist, who don't seem to have any principles whatsoever. The funny thing is, like, I like I'm constitutionally inclined to want to like the Federalist, to want to like the people there. My only question is, how could they even conceptualize their role as being good? As being honest. I mean, I understand Sargon the Akkad. I disagree with Sargon, but I don't understand how he could not get things. But the Federalists, they're literally looking at a situation where the only possible role that they have is being the rightmost acceptable position in a world where the left gets to decide what's acceptable opinions to have. And they might literally, if Christopher Hitchens were alive today, they might take him under the roof. But to have Christopher Hitchens be inside a magazine that is more or less conservative in the Buckleyite sense is to only make a mockery out of Christopher Hitchens' entire career. I wonder what Christopher Hitchens, and this is the slam against Christopher Hitchens, I wonder what Christopher Hitchens would say about the SJWs, about the social justice warriors, about the New Left. Oh, I know what Christopher Hitchens would say about the New Left. Who fucking cares what Christopher Hitchens would have said about the New Left? Nobody cares what Christopher Hitchens would have said about the New Left. He couldn't say anything about the New Left. They wouldn't platform him. They wouldn't platform him, and the only way he could possibly get a platform is to essentially go to the reactionaries that he spent his entire career convincing people in power to not listen to. His entire career before the 2000s was telling everybody from the well-to-do sector of society that people like me should not be platformed or listened to. And he spent his entire career mainstreaming an idea of Trotskyism, which later turned around and took people like him and promptly deplatformed. Who cares what people like Christopher Hitchens think? The left doesn't, and if the right has an ounce of testosterone still left in it, it shouldn't either. I don't know. Go to a decade where their ideas were relevant in some way, shape, or form. Die Hard Doogie here, $10. Big no for Pat. Big yes for Jordan Peterson. Your discussion about faith, reason, and religion would be great. Like you and Jonathan Pagao, missing the mark, and Jordan B. Peterson would be awesome. I will pay for a Jordan B. Peterson talk. Die Hard Doogie is... I also would like to read more from Die Hard Doogie. He submitted a great essay to the now defunct Via Obscura. Don't worry, the essay is not going anywhere. First of all, Via Obscura is not going to go down. We're just going to... The links will still be active. We're just going to put a little notice, and you're going to get to go to another blog. We just have to listen to the name. But I don't know. I mean, why would Pat Buchanan be bad? I mean, he's old. He's a boomer, but I mean, he's been more or less right about anything, everything. I mean, I don't know. I can't immediately think. I mean, I guess his history of World War II seemed questionable, but he was right about our foreign interventions. He was right about the problems of the American working class. He was right about the culture war. I don't know, for someone who's that right about things and that right about things before it became apparent and necessary to say those things, I can't fault him for some of the things that I find disagreements on. Jailbot for $5. Do you think the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race? That's too strong. I don't think we fully learned how to adapt to the Industrial Revolution. I think the Industrial Revolution was the first time in the human race where the human race needed to literally say, that technology, yes, we'll take that. That other technology, we shouldn't take that. Before the Industrial Revolution, I think it could be correctly argued that there was no technology that wasn't an improvement of human affairs, at least when one accepts military technology. Now, I know that there were early people like Milton and Dante who believed that firearms had a demonic dimension. Did Dante think this? I think Milton certainly did. You can see this in Paradise Lost, where the rebel angels fight with engines and the angels fight with swords. But there was a belief sort of that the modern military machines like cannons and guns were a step away from the divinely ordained swords. And you could see this even in before firearms with the chivalric forces of the knights at Agincourt going up against the Welsh longbows. But to me that seems questionable. I think that okay, swords really show that a man has trained his whole life to be a chivalric knight. Well, why do you have armor, right? Uh, I guess we could all use katanas and do kendo. Maybe that would be the optimal way to do this. We could just do duels. I mean, but I think the Industrial Revolution was a turning point because I think in the Industrial Revolution you literally saw the emergence of technology, the first peaceful dehumanizing technology. Now, I don't think we should go get rid of the Industrial Revolution. I think that on balance it was still good. I like having flush toilets. I like having penicillin. I like having the ability to not have most of my money go towards food and clothing. But at the same time, uh, I don't know. I recognize that there were bad consequences. People like Tolkien weren't making shit up. Thalia Mania for $2 says, Dave, you need to go off like that more. I can't even remember what I went off like. I think this is one thing. I know with all of these life changes coming up in my future, I know I'm going to get a lot more busy. I know I'm going to, with the whole family thing, content creation is always going to be difficult. I think I always will have time for a live stream, and I think it's important that even if I do have to go on hiatus, I don't disappear. I want to make sure that people understand that I might have to step away from this YouTube channel, but I always want to be in the background helping people out, even if I don't have the ability, due to obligations of family and work, to be as present as I am over the last year. But I will keep in. I'll keep. I'm glad that people enjoy live streams because I always feel like I suck at them. I, I know people. I get the sense that there are people who like genuinely. They'll accept the fact that I stutter a little bit, that I get up, that I have background noise, for the opportunity to hear more emotion in my voice, to hear me feel more passionate about things, and a flubbed word here and there isn't that big of a deal. And then some people want to have more formatted videos where things are more planned out. But the problem with the formatted videos is I'm not a professional voice actor. So people are gonna have to accept two things. Either video is gonna be so highly edited that there's gonna be weird pauses here and there because I'm literally cutting it together from me thinking it up on the spot. Or I'm going to be reading from a script, in which case I'm going to be reading with not a lot of emotion. And even when I'm reading from... Okay, sorry about that. It looks like I got disconnected, but I should be back now. So, see, there'll be a gap here somewhere. I'm going to keep on talking. That was OBS's fault 100%. But what I was saying is that Coach Red Pill, people like him, have a natural way of talking that people find charismatic, and that's not something that was ever raised with. I stutter. I'm an academic, sort of, not really anymore. But I have a lot of academic background. I'm a technician by training. I was never somebody who sold things. I'm not like John Mark or like even like Kurt Doolittle or Coach Red Pill. So I always have a lot. I will produce things that are either extemporaneous, like this is, where I'm stuttering everywhere, and you get more emotion, or I'll produce things that are kind of a little stilted and off key, like my produce videos. But that's just going to have to be the trade off. That's the product I have. I don't think that will be ever entirely fixed, although I do hope to get better a little bit. Tales of Ruin for £2. Thank you so much for your contribution. Did you hear that Molebug contacted Justin Murphy? Well, maybe the international man of mystery, Curtis Yavin, is ready to step back into the spotlight. That would be phenomenal. I like Justin Murphy a lot. Again, a man, Justin Murphy is almost a photo negative version of Nick Fuentes. Like, did the perfect reactionary get caught in some kind of weird transporter accident, and half of them transport into Nick Fuentes, and the other half of them transported into Justin Murphy? Justin Murphy is considered. He comes off as sincere. He's intellectually grounded. What he says is interesting. But at the same time, he's temperamentally projects progressivism. He has this, everything about his demeanor says, I don't want to advance this meme, but I will. Everything about his demeanor, his countenance says soy. And Nick Fuentes comes off like a black braggart, as a right-winger, as a guy that hasn't read anything necessarily, but has a certain kind of confidence and natural right-wing testosterone. And in many ways are two halves of the same coin. I almost want to put them together now. But I do temperamentally like Justin Murphy, because Justin Murphy's from my tribe. He comes from the world that I come from. And for that reason, I will tend to overlook probably a lot of things that are problems. I really, if Justin Murphy can get an interview with Mencius Moldbug, that will be amazing. That will break the reactionary side of the internet. Rubber Duck 955. Thanks for your vids. Plans for future essays. Are you including video essays? My next planned video essay is most likely going to be BioShock Infinite. Trad Codex. It's going to be the follow-up to that. I think it's just the natural next thing. And so the Trad Codex video was going to take on anime next, but I decided it just made more sense and it was easier to make the BioShock Infinite video. And it also set up the anime video a lot better. And I think that next step is going to allow me to transition into different fare going forward. So that's my next thing. Although I had to say this, guys, like, if you ever have a request, and I guess I technically said that people who support me on Subscribestar, obviously they'll get dibs. But if people have a desire, if they hear me talk about an idea and they want to see it done, and it's not, I have to say that I have to introduce one caveat, and it's not the distributism video. Because the Mencius Moldbug video, I had to write out. The distributism video, I will also have to write out. And what's the reason for this? But okay, if it's not those two videos that I had to write out, then I can. If you hear an idea of mine and you want to see it done, then just make a lot of noise, and it will probably go up in the priority. Any of these ideas I could do. You just have to. It's just a question of when did they get done next week, next month, next year. They'll get done eventually. But I can't necessarily promise timing, except that they're next on the queue, and making noise for them does help it. That does give me the impression that it will get brought forward. The distributism video and the Mencius Moldvig video have to be written out because they're not about my ideas. And I'm a little bit paranoid about misquoting somebody. Because that's something that is an actual faux pas that I'm trying to avoid. If it's my opinion, in all its subjectivity and all of its flaws, I can just spit it out, record it for your guys' benefit. I have more or less an idea of what I want to say about Bioshock Infinite, Alice in Wonderland, and Anne of Green Gables, which I'm all going to do in one video. And that just is just a matter of me sitting down and recording it. So if you make noise for that, I'll just do it. And I have kind of a vaguer idea of what I want to say about anime. Again, I might have to make 2 videos on that, but this is going to have to be yeah, lots of plans for future essays. If it's writing essays, you mean, I'm a slow writer. I wanted to write an essay in the Via Obscura format about the death of rock and roll, called How Rock Became Period. But I haven't written it yet. I wanted to write an extended essay called An Open Letter to an Open-Minded Agnostic, but I've written about half of that, and it's just going to be long, guys. It takes me a long time to write out essays. I almost have half a mind to just record the essay and then get someone to transcribe it. That might actually take less time. Thea Mania for $5. The guy who wrote the Hitchens article is a personal friend. He re-uploaded the article to his blog. Okay, great. So I didn't want to plagiarize what would Christopher Hitchens thought of SJWs. Who cares? That was a brilliant takedown. As soon as I saw that line in his essay, I knew that I never needed to do a video on Christopher Hitchens, and to the extent that I needed to do a video, I just needed to read that line. Yeah, it sums up everything wrong with Christopher Hitchens. What would Christopher Hitchens have thought about SJWs? I know. Who fucking cares? It's so manifestly true. I guess the answer is that Sargon. He would have thought Sargon. And this is the funny thing, is that Sargon's actually more interesting than Christopher Hitchens was. And that's saying a lot. That's damning. I mean, I think Sargon God's a great guy, but I don't. He's almost kind of a great guy because he's fundamentally average. He's not a great guy because he has some kind of amazingly fresh take. But and maybe if I see who that actually is, or if you link it all, maybe I'll put it in the low bar before I go down. Okay, who wants to watch? I mean, dare I just make this video like the longest video ever? You know what, guys? I think I'm actually starting to feel it. I will watch the Innuendo Studio clip where he gives a lecture to the college. I guess I'll talk about it a little bit. And why do I constantly go back to Innuendo Studios? I think Innuendo Studios is the prototype of the white progressive. And every ounce of our effort as a reactionary has to be put towards making sure that we can make it fundamentally not fun to be Innuendo Studios. How can... It's not that we have to answer people like Innuendo Studios and Chapo Trap House and ContraPoints. They won't platform us. And to the extent that, we can answer them. I mean, Sargon of Akkad might struggle with Destiny. And I don't personally agree with how he handled ContraPoints. I don't personally, and this is the funny thing too, and for people who are still listening, I wonder how many people are actually even listening to this. Let me check. I actually am really kind of curious. Oh, okay. You want me to watch the video? Maybe I will watch the video. But let me finish the thought first and actually figure out how many people are watching this thing. I'm kind of curious at this stage. Oh, like too many people watching this cast. People are still watching it. If people have no problem with restreaming a lot, then I don't have a problem continuing to talk and watch things. But I'll say this: I need to complete the thought. So Sargon, people like Sargon of Akkad can defeat ContraPoints in an argument. People like Roaming Millennial can defeat ContraPoints in an argument. And by defeat, I mean they can come out from arguing with ContraPoints and appear like they won. Now, people who watch this channel will... I'm getting to my ultimate point, but I need to address this in passing. People on this channel realize that a person who I frequently on the stream did a review of me debating ContraPoints, Argent Templar. And in typical Argent Templar fashion, we have to go to the ultimate nth degree of meta, and he's commenting on a debate I had 2 years ago from somebody that he could in an instant literally talk to. He could just talk to me. He doesn't need to stream about me in the past tense, but of course, because this is Argent, everything has to be super meta. We have to literally comment on reality like it's a video game. And so he streamed, he said that I lost against ContraPoints. Now, this is a distinct minority view. Most people I talked to thought that I got the best of ContraPoints. Even people who liked ContraPoints said that. And the video did well for me. But he did have a point in one regard. And the point in this, if by losing to ContraPoints, because I think ContraPoints looked really stupid after that debate because he couldn't answer any of my questions in a satisfying way. And he literally, at the end of the debate, contradicted himself. Or I'll use himself here because he was him then. But I will say that Argent does have a point. If Argent assumed that I was debating ContraPoints in 2017 the way that I would debate ContraPoints in 2019, then he's absolutely right. In early 2017, when I debated ContraPoints was not a phenomenon like they are today. They were just another progressive YouTuber. I had every expectation that if I had a reasonably good interaction with ContraPoints, that I would get another one. And because of that, I was trying to be conciliatory and not aggressive. If I got a chance to take on ContraPoints now, that conversation would be 1,000 times more progressive, it would be 1,000 times more aggressive. Because I know I would never get another chance, because ContraPoints is no longer, well, he's no longer a he. They're also no longer just another YouTuber. They're a phenomenon. They're a savior of YouTube. They're the de-radicalizer of right-wing men. And my goal debating the ContraPoints of 2019 would be to demonstrate that they have absolutely no credibility whatsoever. And I would have pulled out the stops and gone for the jugular. And I think that, Sargon of Akkad came out on top with ContraPoints. Their main problem is that they're not aggressive enough. ContraPoints needs to have their affiliation with communism needs to be trotted out. They need to have that affiliation rubbed into their faces. They need to go, you literally toy with the idea of punching Nazis. You literally are acting like a McCarthyite when it comes to people on the dissident right. If you sound like a fascist, you should be considered a fascist and deplatformed. You literally said this on your video. And in the same video, you toy with being a communist. Like, how dare you? Do you have any intellectual integrity, ContraPoints? I mean, that's what ContraPoints needs to be asked. Someone needs to stare ContraPoints, and if ContraPoints did this with me, I would definitely use my face. I'd stare them straight in the face and said, you literally think that we need to accuse people of being fascists, even if they do not claim that title. And in the same video, you joke about communism that killed 100 million people. How dare you? Do you have no intellectual integrity? And that's what someone needs to say to ContraPoints. But in 2016, they had not made the video on the alt-right yet. They seemed more or less honest, and they also seemed like another YouTuber. And at that point, it seemed like the tactic was more passive. But, okay, all that as a mere passing point to the problem of the fact that nobody cares about debating progressives because you can defeat them. Anybody can waltz on and stump. Does anyone think they can't stump Thought Slime? Does anyone think that Peter Coffin's going to put up a good debate? Did anyone think that, like, Badmouth literally has made videos about me. He made a video about me, cross-cutting me with no less than Lana Lotkev and the pagan alt-right LARP gang. I got Badmouth on a conversation about communism. He freaking tapped out in like 20 minutes. Couldn't answer basic questions about communism. Nobody is under any illusion that people can hold up a debate or a conversation in good faith. They crumble because they have no experience actually putting their ideas to any kind of dialectic where they don't control all of the assumptions and whether they aren't getting patted on the head for being progressive good boys. You look at people like Peter Coffin and you look at people like Thought Slime and you look at people like Innuendo Studios. The immediate emotion is, these were the motherfuckers. Sorry, profanity alert. I shouldn't be swearing. This is a Friday Night Lent. Well, whatever. Okay, I'm fasting from meat, but I have to say profanity. Otherwise, I don't communicate the problem. But these are the. Okay, I will swear. Profanity alert install. These are the motherfuckers who, in your college class, were getting patted on the head by professors for agreeing with them and validating from all their opinion. You know, there's always these people. For anyone who went through cultural studies, they knew that they knew for people who and I did a video on this called Engaging with Progressive Institutions. If you were to go and you know, for some reason, 20 years of reporting on this, the Federalist still hasn't figured out how this works. If you go into a college classroom that's super progressive, what the professor will do is he has a bunch of people who are the progressive people in this class, and he knows who they are. And he literally, he passes softballs to them so that they can slam them. And so that progressive ideas can be expressed via the students. Yet, if conservative students speak up, he immediately starts playing hardball Socratic method with them. And then everyone laughs when they act like 19-year-olds. And if you're someone who has any kind of non-progressive ideas and you walk into one of these environments, you end up really, really hating these brown nosers that you know are sort of in mini cahoots with the professor. And basically Innuendo Studios and Thought Slime and half of these progressive people who they're entering into a contentious world of political debate, and they look like they've got these they look at the camera with these big eyes, and they just have these opinions. That's just my opinion, I just think we should take care of people, like communism. Communism is about taking care of people. Stare into the camera. I'm just being reasonable, right? And you're wondering all the while watching a Peter Coffin video, who the hell are you staring at, Peter? You want to push him away from the camera. And every time you watch a Thought Slime video, you're wondering, who the hell, who the hell are you playing dumb for, Thought Slime? I mean, there's only you and your progressive audience who already agrees with you. So why is this act going on? This act is going on for the hypothetical professor that they developed these opinions around, and who's no longer there. Everything about their demeanor is meant to get the little pat on the head from the progressive professor, and that's what they've been raised with. And so their ideas are not contentious. So the reason why I'm kind of obsessed with this Innuendo Studios thing, and I consider him the prototype for this, is that we need a way to figure out how to make being Thought Slime and being Innuendo Studios not fun anymore? Because it's really fun to be them, right? It's really, I mean, I don't envy ContraPoints because they're obviously dealing with, I mean, I hate to compare Millennial Woes to ContraPoints, but actually something is really delicious about it. Because, I mean, the one emotion I get when I look at Millennial Woes and ContraPoints is these people are dealing with a lot of, like, distinct problems that arise from being a professional YouTuber psychologically. And so I don't envy ContraPoints for that reason. Although I think Millennial Woes' problems, strangely enough, are a lot more minor than ContraPoints. And for some reason, ContraPoints is addressing his psychological or their psychological problems with surgery. So there's that. But pardon me. Okay. The thing is that it's fun to be a YouTuber on the left. If ContraPoints did not have their psychological problems with depression, which are obvious from watching their video that they suffer from depression, it would be fun to be ContraPoints, wouldn't it? You make a video a month and you make 10 times, I mean, you make more than a professional engineer who works an insane amount of hours. You get to express your opinions and you're showered with adoration from every sphere. And you can get this kind of response even from being someone like Thought Slime. Maybe I couldn't do what ContraPoints does in terms of production, but I can certainly do what Thought Slime does. What a cartoon avatar and soy face with basic bitch communist opinions. I mean, that's easy. I mean, I could be, that's easy. I basically do have a better YouTube than Thought Slime does. But it's fun to be these people because you can be a progressive YouTuber and get congratulated from it, from the progressive community. And that's a fun position to be in. It's fun to have the opinions that Innuendo Studios has. We have to make it not fun. We don't have to defeat them in debates. We have to make it not fun to be like them, to be in their position. Now, part of this will happen when people of color take a larger role in the progressive coalition. Believe you me, when there are more non-white people inside the progressive coalition, they're not going to feel particularly good about continuously applauding ContraPoints for making the 400th video on how hard it is to be a trans white person. They're not going to do that. And naturally, there's going to be a reactionary push to take down white progressives a notch. And that will be the first nail in the coffin of white progressivism. The follow-up for white progressives is going to be to go out harder, to be more aggressive towards people like me, to point out how they're hitting Nazis, to point out how they're de-radicalizing bad, dissident right white people like myself. We need to deny them the pleasure. We need to make it as, we need to make the prospect of hitting a person like me seem weak and seem like a bullying. We need to make it appear like it actually is, as a bullying tactic designed to curry favor with a coalition that they obviously are losing influence from. People like Innuendo Studios and PhilosophyTube and every other one of these Antifa shits on the progressive side, these white boy part-time Antifa LARPers, they all need to be shown up for the bullies that they are. And that's what they are. Antifa is bullying. And it's a moral, it's a signal bullying too. And that's why ContraPoint's creation of Tabby, the Antifa cat person, is literally popular. Uh, they literally think this idea of the transgender white person who hits people they disagree with baseball bats is some kind of admirable position to be in. But I don't know. This reality needs to be brought back. And non-white people don't find that admirable. It's just progressives find it admirable when they're gazing in the mirror. It's narcissistic, and I wonder if the ContraPoints Tabby character, if the transgender white Antifa member were to hit Richard Spencer with a baseball bat, and they probably wouldn't hit them very hard because they're progressives. That kind of looks kind of heroic. I mean, it doesn't because, but inside the progressive media, they can spin it. If they hit somebody like if they hit Laura Towler, it looks less heroic. If they hit somebody like Nick Land, it looks less heroic. We just can't be their villains. We can't be their villains. We can't look like the straw man. Richard Spencer, and I get that in 2016 the right said we're done running. But we're done running, and we're going to look exactly like the straw man you always said the right was are two very different things. And I guess in 2019, if we can build something that does not look like the straw man, then I think that will be a good position. You know what, guys? It's 12 o'clock. I do want to do the review of the video. Maybe I can just make this part 1, and I'll take up the review of the video when I get back on Sunday. But I think I might close it out because I don't think I'm going to get through an hour-long video. I think I'm going to fall asleep at that point, and I'd rather try to make better content than that. I'm going to double check to make sure that there aren't any super chats that I missed. And in the meantime, I will answer @replies. I guess for anyone who stayed up as incredibly late as it is on the West Coast, on the East Coast, you can ask me. Or if you're in morning time in Europe, you can also ask me questions at this time. Oh God, I hate this whole thing where they change the format. Make it hard for you to just want a consistent format with the super chat thing. Okay. Did I answer all the super chats? Yeah, I think I got all of them. Yeah, I think I got all of them. Okay. The Distributus is the love child of Foucault and some random right-winger. I don't think gay people can have a love children. Yeah, the left looks good when they're dunking on the strawman versions of the right. That's why I find Innuendo Studios so fascinating, is that his entire channel is him dunking on strawman versions of the right that you can never actually see him have actual conversations with. Like, every Innuendo Studios video necessarily, it forces you to believe that this guy is interacting with right-wingers all the time, but you can never actually see him interacting with real people. Because if you saw him interacting with real people, then people could correct him on his mistakes. There was one video, I think it's called There Will Always Be a Bigger Fish, where he actually did get some things correct about right-wingers. And, like, the obvious liberal lie that right-wingers all think that they're going to be rich. That's not correct. But he did realize something, that right-wingers naturally think that hierarchy is a good thing. And, this might be a psychological feature, but we almost wish... I'd rather be low person on the hierarchy than to not have a hierarchy. I almost think it's unjust to have me elevated above someone. I'll give you an example. Like Roger Scruton. Roger Scruton's smarter than me. He's more accomplished than me. He writes brilliant essays about Wagner, about architecture, about classical music. There is no reasonable, just system where I should be elevated above him. Now, I can point out things that he's missed. I can, as a plebeian, I'm not a complete plebeian, but as someone in the middle class, I can direct that a great individual like Roger Scruton to things that may be overlooked because he's older than me, because there's generational myopia. But I'm not higher than him, and that's an important distinction. And I think that's something that right wingers instinctively glom onto. Mac Darodensky says, "I will give you more shekels if you stay. $2. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, I'll stay for 20 more minutes. But that video that I was talking about reviewing is an hour. I'm not going to be able to stay up for another hour. Not at least not when I'm getting up at 6 a.m. these days. You know, it used to be I get up at 8. You know, I could swing going to 1 a.m. kind of. But now that I have more of a regular schedule again, I'm an early riser once more. Not that I am by nature. Okay, this is not an at distributist. But I looked at the chat and I saw this. Mr. Conservative, let me tell you something. Yeah, Innuendo Studios literally said that. He's like, I don't think you have consistent beliefs, Mr. Conservative. Let me point out all of the natural little inconsistencies that I can pick out by going to one conservative opinion and then going to another person who's conservative and juxtaposing those apparent contradictions. Dude, Innuendo Studios, you must know that you can pick, if you're going to the left wing or the right wing, you can pick out apparent contradictions. The funny thing about, usually you can't just go to a side and pick out apparent contradictions because it's too easy. But what's so funny is that even in progressives, even in a single person, you can pick out apparent contradictions. In counterpoints, I picked out an apparent contradiction while he was literally sitting there in a live environment, and they could not figure out how to rectify the contradiction between claiming that straight men did and could have access to easy casual sex, and the contradiction with the idea that obtaining easy casual sex through, well, apparent deception was morally wrong. Is Nick Bostrom's simulation theory sound in your view? Is this the idea that we might be in a simulation? I don't know. It just sounds like we're trying to. And this is what I think is actually going on in the world, is that 99% of the reason why progressives are winning, 99% of the reason why post-enlightenment thought is winning, is because language. The reason why we can't conceptualize God is because language. The reason why we don't understand Plato's point about the cave is because we don't understand caves and torches. As long as you put Plato's cave in words of a simulation, then all of a sudden we get it and we can talk about it. I wouldn't be surprised if every classically conservative or traditional idea, or what we're really just talking about is classical wisdom. I wouldn't be surprised if every element of classical and Christian wisdom isn't just reconceptualized with new words. Like G.K. Chesterton said, I bet half of the atheists of his time, they could believe in the resurrection if you called it the regalvanization rather than the resurrection, because everyone was convinced in Chesterton's time that you could reanimate corpses by running electricity through their body. In the Men Who Killed Bin Laden video, you talked about liberal globalism failing against Islam. What do you think about Dubai and how it globalized? Okay, I want to be clear. In the Men Who Killed Bin Laden, I think when I said global liberalism fell against Islamism, I don't mean that I don't mean that the leftward forces are necessarily going to be destroyed by Islamism. What I meant to say is that in its interaction with Islam, liberal globalism demonstrated that it had absolutely no principles, that it was just an entropic move to the left, that it was essentially just entropy, and that it was not actually an intellectual movement. I think the way to buy globalized is just by having a shit ton of money. I mean, is money talks as a phenomenon interesting? It's a reality. I don't know if it's something that I'm particularly surprised about, though. What do you think of E. Michael Jones? He's got a point about the sexual revolution. I think he goes a little bit far on that one topic that can get this channel taken down. Which, even though I'm on the side of the cathedral on that particular issue, I can't even reference that issue, even to assert that it's false. Because it's too risky. But yeah, E. Michael Jones has probably a good take on the sexual revolution. That's probably where our common ground is. And I have to say this, if it wasn't for E. Michael Jones, I wouldn't have known of the existence of The Pawnbroker, which is actually a fairly notable movie in the history of cinema. But it's the movie that time forgot, though. Maybe because it does tread a little too close to that one issue that I definitely didn't talk about in this stream. Distributors tried using racialist and other new words. He's actually talking about that now. I don't know. This is the problem, is that if you don't play into progressive magical words, you can't even agree with the cathedral. Like, I can't say that I'm not racist. Even if I did say that I don't like the idea of race as an organizing principle, which is, in any evaluation, should be what racist means, right? But I can't say that because racist is a magical word. And all using racism implies is that you agree that how progressives have set up our discourse is correct. So I can't even use progressive words to agree with progressives. Oh, because I by progressive evaluation, I am racist because I believe that people have a right to preserve their culture. I believe that people have a right of association, and in the new progressive in the new progressive notion of racism, that's racist. And I'm sure racism will mean something else. Racism now means that you fail implicit association tests, which means, which again is highly questionable if that means what the left used racism to mean in other regards, but it is what it is. By that measure, most Americans are racist, and most black Americans are racist too. Distributors, what's your take on capitalism? You should look at my most recent video. My take on capitalism is nothing, because capitalism doesn't mean anything. Capitalism is it's not the worst magical word. I will write on the new wiki, I will write a little bit of an article on magical words, and I want to really distinguish them from buzzwords. Because people said, distributist, you did capitalism, do democracy next. And sure enough, I think democracy is overvalued. And I think that people have a magical notion of the goods that democracy brings. And direct democracy is infeasible on a non-local scale. But at the same time, I don't think democracy is a magical word. Because despite the fact that it's got strong emotional associations, and a lot of the times people just want to use those associations, most of the time when people use democracy, they just mean voting. And so it does actually mean something. Whereas to be a true magical word, the word has to kind of mean almost nothing. Like racism means almost nothing. It means implicit associations. It means having any kind of notion of wanting to preserve your culture if you're an indigenous European. It means outright bigotry. It means desiring ill for other groups, which I absolutely do not do. in any way, shape, or form. I'm also opposed to bigotry. But racism means all of those things and many more than anything else that the progressives are thinking of this day. It means absolutely nothing. At the end of the day, its implicit associations emotionally mean more than what the word actually literally means, which is not true for democracy. Capitalism is on the cusp of that. Capitalism really doesn't mean any political system. It kind of means post-industrial corporatism, and I'm a huge skeptic of post-industrial corporatism. The Industrial Revolution brought about a huge amount of problems technologically for humanity that we still haven't solved. The corporation is useful. It's a good way of aggregating risk, but at the same time, when it exists on a globalized scale the way something like Amazon does, I think it really is uncontrolled and needs to be massively reformed. And I think we haven't really come to terms with that. Now, does that mean if I think that we need to massively reform industrial civilization, we need to massively reform the corporate system, if I think we need to massively have a redistribution of capital so that people own their own tools, does that make me against capitalism? No, of course it doesn't, because it doesn't fucking mean anything. Because it means whatever the Marxists want to think. Any Marxist could come in here and say that what I just told you is not capitalism, because capitalism means this. I literally have, in that video I made about capitalism, I have people that telling me that capitalists are anybody who has a high wage. And then later in that same video comment section, I have people telling me that small business owners are capitalists. And then I have people telling me that small business owners aren't capitalists. And that I'm strawmanning communists for even implying that small business owners are capitalists. There are 5 different definitions of capitalism inside the comment thread of my capitalism video, and each communist who's claiming that I'm strawmanning the communist definition of capitalism has a totally different definition of capitalism than every other communist. The word doesn't mean anything. It just means bad system that stands. Capitalism just means bad person that stands in the way of John Lennon's Imagine. That's all it means. It means bad person who's standing in the way of an imaginary system that has never existed and probably never will exist, unless some beneficent AI takes over the world and makes infinite goodies and owns us like sheep, which, as a reactionary, is repugnant to me to begin with. Oh, wow, I'm still getting super chats. Well, thank you very much. Mac Darendensky for $20 says 20 minutes, 20 shekels. And what is your thought? Okay, I'll keep this going for 15 more minutes because I think this is 5 minutes since you tweeted this. So we'll end this around 12:33. But this is the last, since my voice is failing, this is the last extension super chat I'll take. But thank you very much for your contribution. I'm actually enjoying this because it's been a while since I've made a video. And I really, really do enjoy speaking into this microphone. I need to get a replacement here. Maybe now that I finally actually have my own place, maybe I can, my own place. Maybe I can actually set something up here. What is your thoughts on Sargon running for MP? I think it's a good thing, but I'm afraid he's going to say something more autistic and make YouTubers, independent media look even worse. Yeah, I basically that's it. Sargon running for parliament is a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing because it moves the Overton window right, and it makes YouTube hard to ignore. Now, can I rule out that this is going to explode in the right wing's face? No. Worst case scenario, Sargon says, I represent the right. And then he says something that's really stupid. But even then, the stuff that Sargon says that's stupid, it's never hurt him. There was a while back where people were like, oh, Sargon had a stupid idea. This means Sargon's over. Sargon's always had crackpot ideas since he started his channel. And then when his ideas fail, he just does different things, and some things work. He's sort of anti-fragile that way, right? I feel that we have a lot more to gain from, especially since he's not running as a right winger. I feel like we have a lot more to gain for him running as an NP than we have to lose. If nothing else, it'll make good television, right? I don't know, and I have to say I do like Sargon, and the reason why I like Sargon is because he is he speaks to the everyman. You know, I never thought of this. I mean, it doesn't. No one ever thinks about this too, right? You can beat the market, and if you know the market exactly, you can make money. But if you beat the market just in a vague sense, you don't make money. And the perfect example is, I mean, a perfect example is prepping. That's where I started initially, right? Like, why do preppers, let's say disaster is happening, why do preppers lose even when disaster eventually happens? Well, they lose because they're just trying to get ahead of the market in a vague sense. If you're prepping, it doesn't do you any good because 90% of the money you put into prepping just gets wasted. And in the meantime, you're not investing in the real world. You're not exploiting the opportunities that are right in front of your nose. And the same thing is true for political opinions. I mean, people are like, oh, well, how awesome would it have been to understand all the things that we know now 20 years ago? I don't know. I mean, I guess, it would help because we would understand the world better. But it wouldn't be politically useful because people wouldn't understand it. And most of the stuff that I say, people don't understand because people don't. The normies and the people who experience the world, they're at a certain place. And they're just not ready to hear things. And Sargon is very much more in a place where everyone else is. I would say he's like that character from Idiocracy who's like, he's average height, he's average weight, he's average intelligence. He's an incredibly average person. And his stunning anti-fragility aside, he's in his kind of ability to come up with weird crackpot ideas aside, he's not really bad at anything either. So he's just a very good marker about where the conversation is. So I can show people his interview. I can show normies his interview with Steve Bannon, and they don't get immediately put off. And that's useful. It's very useful. Okay, last 10 minutes. How much of progressivism is about self-indulgence? Like 90% of it. I mean, it's progressivism. Okay, so imagine progressivism as a tightrope, and one end of the tightrope is attached to the Protestant Reformation, and the other end of the tightrope is attached to, yeah. So basically, Protestantism is a tightrope tied on one end from the nails that Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to, and the other end is nailed to the seventh circle of hell. And that's progressivism. Progressivism did have principles, but it's slowly degrading them. And I don't mean this as a dig on Protestants, by the way. I love, actually, to tell you the truth, and I'm really courting scandal here. To tell you the truth, if I was a Ghibelline in Bavaria, like my ancestors probably were, when Martin Luther nailed his theses to the church door, I would be highly sympathetic. I mean, the Borgia popes, the indulgences. I mean, it was 100 years until Trent would come, until Trent would be fully given teeth. I would be highly sympathetic to the initial Protestant objections against Catholicism. But the problem is it kicked off basically a de-establishment of Christendom, which is a political entity that I wouldn't do anything, but practically speaking, in my political personality, my chief goal is to reestablish the very thing that Protestantism began disestablishing, which is the mode of political Christendom as a political entity, as something that stands up for the people of Christendom in their diversity and in their uniqueness. And in their particularity, be that Scots, be that English, be that Germans, be that Copts, be that Armenians. And so the thing with progressivism is it started off as a de-establishment of Christendom. It then became a de-establishment of Western civilization, and now that Western civilization is fading from the scene, it becomes just self-indulgence. That's why ContraPoints' channel is a perfect microcosm of this. ContraPoints' channel used to be about things, but now it's just about ContraPoints. I look forward to videos 6 and 7 on how it is to be a transgender person, but they're not going to be particularly interesting in any meaningful sense. Oh, okay. So, can someone explain what gibbling means in the way I... So this is something that I might explain this in future videos. When I get around to Dante in my Traditionalist Codex series, which is autobiographical, so it's not going to be for a while, I'll explain this. But in Europe, we oftentimes view the medieval era as being an era without political parties. But in fact, this is not the case. So starting the medieval era, as distinguished from the Dark Ages, was really kicked off at around 1000 AD by the emergence of the Holy Roman Empire, which directly and indirectly brought an end to the last pagan invasions of Europe, both by the Magyars in the east and indirectly by the Vikings, which at that point had become partially converted to Christianity and became Normans. Now, the Normans, who essentially were the Catholicized Vikings and French, and the newly established Holy Roman Empire, had a disagreement about what Christendom was. The Guelphs, who were the Proto-French, and which would soon become France, believed that Europe was essentially an extension of the Catholic Church. That Christendom in Europe was simply the Catholic Church and the knights and the chivalric orders that the Catholic Church essentially designed to be its literal extensions. The King of France and all Norman kings were crowned and given their authority by the Pope. And by the authority of the Pope, they ruled. That's the Guelph position. The Ghibelline position is a little bit more sophisticated. The Ghibelline position was that the mandate of Christendom was a dual mandate. One, divine, which existed in Rome. Another, Roman, which continued on through the holy mission of Rome, which was essentially to bring the West towards civilization. And that essentially the Holy Roman Empire and the Pope shared political power. And that the Pope was the temporal authority, the Holy Roman Emperor was the temporal authority, and the Pope was the eternal authority. Ultimately, the Guelphs won in Europe, and France became dominant over the Ghibelline parties in Europe. This was eventually abused in both Spanish and Italian popes. And it's what, in my opinion, eventually led to the German Reformation, in which the manifest abuses of the Guelph parties through indulgences manifested in a revolution among the Ghibelline factions of German princes towards Lutheranism. And this is what kicked off the process of the destruction of Christendom. it probably was inevitable. Institutions inevitably hit declines like this. And while as justified as the initial rebellion was against the Gulf Order, I think ultimately this ended up creating theological problems in Protestantism and eventually a very slow degradation of Christendom into progressivism and self-indulgence, which we are now only beginning to see. Now, I see a comment in the comment section. How does the Great Schism fit into this? The Great Schism is fundamentally different. The Great Schism took one thing, which was Christianity, and cut it into two, in my opinion, cut it into two things that are more or less preserved themselves. The Eastern churches and the Western churches. They're both Catholic, they're both Orthodox. We need to make those two things one. But it's a fundamentally different problem than the Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation, we just need to get over it, guys. Look, the Catholics were right about Christendom being one in one political church. I just don't think that they're seriously. I know there's political. I know that there were abuses in the church. I don't think there are any meaningful and intact Protestant objections to Catholic theological points. And I'm sure me and Paul Vander Clay are going to have that out at some point since he's a Calvinist. I just don't think that there are meaningful ones that are in existence, and I guess, and it's funny because I have a deep political sympathy with Dante, because Dante was a Guelph because he had to be, but he had Ghibelline sympathies, which are why he got exiled, and he expresses those in the Divine Comedy. But the Reformation is basically over. We need a political order to retake the mantle of Christendom, and we need to stop fighting with each other. And the main torch of the Reformation, which is now the progressive cathedral, needs to be destroyed. The Orthodox Protestants need to be re-embraced in some way by the church, not fully, obviously, because they're not in communion with us, but politically. And I think the last true Protestant will draw their breath when progressive white people die. Progressive white people are the last true Protestants. Actual people who call themselves Protestant Christians are just Catholics that are temporarily not in communion with the church, in my honest opinion. The people who take the logic of the Reformation seriously are white progressives, and we all see where this is going. The evolved logic of Protestantism comes to its terminating point in ContraPoints. Endless videos about gender, which is to say, endless videos about nothing. A reflecting mirror that reflects back on itself. It's literally, and this is what hell is. And this is why I say that progressivism is a tightrope between the Protestant Reformation and the Seventh Circle of Hell. And if you want to put a point on it, that Seventh Circle of Hell probably looks like ContraPoint's channel. What is ContraPoint's channel? It's ContraPoint standing in front of an infinite mirror, going back and back and back and back. Every character is ContraPoints. Every episode of ContraPoints is literally ContraPoints. And it's no mistake that every character is ContraPoints in ContraPoints videos, but I'm beginning to think that every character in ContraPoints imagination is ContraPoints. Now, in the 90s, I'm a 90s kid, and you can probably tell this by listening to this video, but there's two things I remember from the 90s that were incredibly distinctive in my mind, right? Now, maybe we'll make this a Trad Codex series. Being John Malkovich and Aphex Twin. And they both have very interesting depictions of hell. Now, Being John Malkovich is by that great Jewish screenwriter. I forget what his name is. Kaufman. Charlie Kaufman. Isn't that his name? Yeah, anyway, he's a great Jewish screenwriter, and he wrote a highly self-referential movie called Being John Malkovich. It stars John Malkovich, and it's about people who found a way to become John Malkovich for a short period of time by going through a portal. And when John Malkovich goes through this portal, he enters into a world for 50 minutes, because it's a temporary portal, where every single person in the world is John Malkovich. It's himself reflected back through a funhouse mirror again and again and again and again and again. And it's horrifying. Now, Aphex Twin is a techno artist who comes from around the time of Daft Punk. So it's a little bit later. It's late 90s, early 2000s. And his thing was, unlike Daft Punk, who never showed their face, Aphex Twin, the guy who was Aphex Twin, decided that his thing was that he would take his face and put it in all sorts of creepy places where it didn't belong. And this resulted in a number of really creepy videos. One of them's called Come to Daddy, or what is it called again? I think it's called Come to Daddy. Whatever, but it's his face on a bunch of children. And it's really creepy because the guy is like this ugly British dude who's like a ugly British ginger dude. Another one called Window Licker, which is more prominent in my mind, has the guy from Aphex Twin. He intrudes on what looks like it's an abortive hip-hop video, except that when he comes in, and he looks very satanic when he comes in, he transforms all of the hot women into depictions of himself. They all have the Aphex Twin ugly ginger redhead face on like an otherwise like, hip-hop video backup dancer body where like, all the fat and the butts are hanging out of the swimsuits. And it is horrifying. And I remember seeing Window Licker, the music video, and I went to think, this is what hell looks like. Hell is your carnal desires, except your carnal desires are all yourself, staring back into you in funhouse mirrors. And that's literally the ContraPoints video. I don't think ContraPoints is particularly ugly. They're not like Aphex Twin. They're not. I don't even know what the guy isn't called Aphex Twin, but they're not like the music singer from there. I'm not horrified when I see ContraPoints, but the world they depict, where every person is themselves staring back at themselves, is literally what I imagine hell to be, and it's literally the state of depression, and that's what building my own hell around me, and that seems to be the ultimate end of progressivism. Anyway, guys, it is officially past my time. I thank you for all the super chats. I'm going to end the stream here, and maybe I'll come back and do the cut philosophy thing. Alright, guys, have a wonderful night. God bless, and I think that I'm gonna call it a night.